Hello, hello, my lovely dreamers. Hello to Ninja. Hi, Weeb. Ah, yes. Feed the infinite hunger. Ninja has donated their points to feed the hunger. I'm sure Weeb is saving their points to donate to all of the wrong things. Because that is what Weeb does. Oh. As the title of the stream says, we're going to be reading viewers' stories. The first story we already have lined up. We've talked about it a couple times. We are going to be reading my slime friend's story. Just going to give them a moment to join us on stream. So until then, let's hop into our chatting room. How is everyone today, this lovely Sunday evening? Ooh, excuse me. It is a very early evening for me so far, but got things going, dinner's going. Good, good, good. Just ate. That's good. I actually have not eaten my dinner. I have it right next to me, and I'm going to be taking advantage of ad breaks to eat. But I'm glad to hear that everyone is good so far today. We're going to keep the music at a pretty good volume for right now. We're just waiting for Hugh to actually join us. Hugh is going to be joining us live on stream to help me with some of the pronunciation of character names and things like that. I also did have a new layout for when we're reading or discussing things so that you guys can see it better. So hopefully you guys will like the new reading layout. Yes, the link to the story is in the pinned comment. And as you can see in my stream title, there is a new command you can now use called !read, which will give you the link to submit your own stories. So if you do !R read, you get the lovely link. And there it is. Thank you, Weeb, for showing it off. That is the link if you want to have your own story read on stream. I did test it earlier to make sure it works and that I get the responses, so we should be all good for that. It's going to be nice. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a great way to give back to everyone who comes and hangs out with me and watches my streams, especially since we have quite a few writers, considering I do writing and reading streams and workshops. So we're just giving Q a moment. Oh, looks like Q is here. I need to turn up their volume. Hugh.
Can you hear me?
I need to turn you up a little more. We're going to stop the music. I can speak again?
Hello, hello.
Oh, now I can hear you. Can everyone else on the stream hear Hugh? Can you guys hear Hugh?
Sorry, we did not test this beforehand, folks. My sourdough suddenly decided it was ready to be beaten up again. So
A little quiet? All right, let me turn Hugh up a bit more. My volume is controlled separately from yours, so I have to make sure everyone else can hear you. How about now? Is that a little bit better for Hugh?
La 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 la.
All right. Everyone says that's much better. Hello, Squish Hugh, our favorite little slime friend.
And I am adorable next to you.
You are absolutely adorable, and we're so glad to have you on stream with us today.
doing something that's not repo. See, we're not addicted, folks.
I'm not sure we can get away with that quite yet.
Shh. No, if we say it with enough confidence, it'll work.
I'm not sure that can be true considering I was on your stream earlier today playing Repo.
Ninja, no, why are you outing us?
I'm not sure it's much outing when it's just facts.
No.
All right, now that we have Hugh here, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story before we get into reading it?
So, the couple things with reincarnated shapeshifter is the main character Anoki is non-binary. You will never know what Anoki was born with because we just start right off with the reincarnation part. In reincarnated shapeshifter, Godly Feast, Anoki has been summoned by the gods to go and do a grand and glorious quest of creating a feast with cursed and blessed items. With 1 year to do it, can Anoki save everybody? Or will races be permanently killed off from the world of Nosh?
All right. And this was for the Action Fantasy Tourney contest last year on Tapas, if I believe so correctly.
Yep, I was actually really proud that it made it to the top 25.
Wow. Actually, I knew you made it into some level of the finals, but I didn't know you were in the top 25.
Yep, I almost made it to the last round. Didn't quite make it, but that's okay. It's still a good book, and gonna get it out on Amazon actually soon.
Ooh, so we're going to get a printed copy of your book?
Yep, that's the plan. I just finished doing all the pretty formatting and praying there isn't some random typo Amazon's gonna scream at me about.
I can tell you from experience that Amazon is not going to take your book down for a typo. There's all kinds of books up there that have typos that Amazon
Well,
doesn't do anything about.
what's crazy is this isn't the first time we put something on Amazon. We've done a coloring book and a little mini one-off comic book,
Mm-hmm.
and even the computer system kept yelling at us, and no one at Amazon would override it. Where everybody's talking over each other, so you couldn't quite make it out. And the point was like everyone was talking over, so you couldn't understand what was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And the computer system was like, "These speech bubbles are unclear," and it's like, yeah, they're supposed to be. Everyone's talking over each other.
Wow. Well, I guess things have probably changed. I haven't self-published since 2017 was the last time I self-published a book. Don't make fun of me, Streamlabs, just because I can't spell. But we're not talking about my spelling today. We're going to be looking at
No,
Hugh's spelling.
oh no.
So let me get my laptop out here so we can get ready to read. And we'll switch over. Ta da! This is our little reading format. Hugh, I might make you a little smaller so that
You can
everyone
make
can
it
see the
small.
text.
I will squish myself down.
We shall squish the Hugh. Squish,
Squish, squish,
squish.
squish, 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 squish.
Squish, squish. All right. And if you would like to read along with the Tapas version, there is the link in the pinned comment on the Twitch side. I also pinned it. I also put it in chat over on YouTube. You can see the link to the story if you want to read along on Tapas. Remember, it is 100% free to read the story on Tapas Community. Tapas Community means it is a free story to read. You do not have to pay to read it, but you support us, the authors, by reading through our stories. So, all right. We're going to start with chapter 1. I am going to put the music back on, but I'm going to turn it way down so you can still hear us over it. Because it's just nice to have background noise sometimes. It would help if I actually hit play. There we go. So that way you should still be able to hear Hugh over it. And Hugh, as always, feel free to jump in at any point if I pronounce something wrong or if you want to explain something or add context or just whatever. This is your story.
I feel like I'll add one bit of context then before we start.
All right, go ahead.
Folks, it took me till chapter 8 to find out I was writing a comedy. See how long it takes you to figure it out.
All right, Hugh has issued a challenge. At what chapter do you figure out this is a comedy? All right, so we're going to start with chapter 1, Repurposed Leftovers. All Z could remember was eating at the restaurant, excited to try goat for the very first time. The disappointment of not having the goat in front of here was to try and have Hare's first thoughts. First thought. As Z laid there, feeling weightless, Hare's first thought was, oh, I can breathe now. There wasn't a time for a third thought, as Hare's body was rotated and now faced toward a long white table and glowing figures that seemed to be standing around it. Finally, the chef made it. A scratchy voice, dripping with venom, said, took long enough. Zay hesitated for a moment, trying to make sense of this. I think I died, didn't I? A being with long, clawed, greenish fingers, 3 times longer than they should be, with skin stretched too tight across the bone, reached out. The curled black claws carefully wrapped around Here's torso, which Zay noticed was missing some features. You are the one that seeks the truth behind the old ways of cooking, yes? And tries dishes without fear? Zay blinked and attempted to make out facial features in the strange light. Well, I did have a vlog I ran. I like learning the history of food and how it's changed. Trying recipes that have slowly changed over time. I wasn't an official chef or anything. It was part-time. My full-time job was working as an assistant manager at a store. An almost musical voice came from the left as a dark hand with stars set inside of the palm extended outward, motioning for the first hand to set here down. Official or not, your soul, young. There was a momentary pause. Did one of you damage the soul? The crackling voice from before spoke up, coming from a swirl of orange mist. I damaged nothing. I removed that which their soul screamed wasn't needed, which is better anyway. Man or woman nor beast can create our feast for us. Ah, well then, young one, your skills are what are needed. Besides, it was better to take you at that moment anyway. This will be far less painful. Painful? So I did die. Zay had the start of a headache from trying to peer into the various lights and mists. Even sitting on what appeared to be a swirling galaxy was a bit too much. Long Fingers spoke up again. Yes, your kind would call it an allergic reaction. Very fast, but very painful. They thought you were choking and failed to get anything up in time. They were trying to force the food out. Zay felt very glad Zay didn't remember that. Okay, I died. Because of a goat. A dead goat. Zay took the time to process that before continuing. So, I have to make a meal for all of you. An overly happy, teetering on manic giggle came from what appeared to be shattered mirrors and glass. When Zay looked at them in the right moment, they showed parts of the others no one needed to see or comprehend. Ooh, yes! We require a feast! A grand feast! And if you don't do it, everyone will die! The voice seemed to squeal with a mix of delight and dread. The laughter rang through the dearly departed soul very strongly, down to whatever passed for here's bones, Zay supposed. Hold on, that's not fair at all. I don't know what to make. What are your expectations? And to kill everyone if I make a mistake isn't right? Zay stomped her foot, appearing to make some comments change course. And a meal for what am I looking at? Gods? Interdimensional beings? The song-like voice wrapped itself around here as a parent would to calm a child throwing a temper tantrum. Well, yes. Ooh. Raina Rainbows. Thank you for the follow.
Woo!
I hope I'm saying that right because it looks like Raina Rainbows. I'm not the
That's
best
what it
at
looks like
pronouncing
to
new
me.
words. But thank you so much for the follow. Since you just joined, anyone just joining in, we are reading right now my friend Squish Hughes' story, The Reincarnated Shapeshifter's Godly Feast, first course. Yeah, I said it right. Also, just so people know, this is dual streaming on YouTube and Twitch. So I will sometimes address YouTube chat. I will sometimes address Twitch chat. I can see both, but I will do my best to keep up with what is going on in both chats. We also have Hugh here on stream with us to add any context they want to add, as well as any pronunciation if I have issues pronouncing anything in their story. So now I have to remember where I left off. Here. We have just started the story. We're in chapter 1, and so far all we know is the main character has been reincarnated and just told they have to cook for who we're about to find out who these beings are. The song-like voice wrapped itself around here as a parent would to calm a child throwing a temper tantrum. Well, yes. You must make a feast that will feed all of us. We all have a curse and a blessing that must be a part of the various courses. We will, of course, give you a body that can handle all of that. Thundering clouds rumbled, causing here hair to stand on end as electricity traveled through the space around them all. You will have a year in the world's time, and you will have gifts from all of us. You, technically, can choose to not do it and risk failing at the end of the year with all of creation. That is your choice. The soul looked around to consider the situation before speaking. All right, when does my time start? Songs, laughter, rumbling, and crackling went around here as they jumped down towards a table, lightly landing on Here's bare toes. They carefully walked towards the light. They seemed to be a part of as they did so. Just as they could see the beginnings of a face before them, a fiery blue phoenix landed before here, spreading its wings so Zay couldn't see anymore. In her mind, Zay could hear the bird's warning. Do not fail before you have started, little chick. There is so much more here than your mind can process yet. You will hatch soon enough. Right, sorry, I was curious. Of course, little chick. One day, when it's time. But not yet. The song settled out into words again. It will begin when you have touched your feet to the mortal realm's soil. Not before, not after. And now, we will give you our gifts. We need only your name, the one your soul sings. My soul? Zay looked at her fingers for a moment and chuckled. I don't know. What will I look like there? Whatever form you desire. Your first gift will be that of an ever-changing form. Much of what you must touch and taste will be dangerous to a human. The now gentle crackling spoke. I can give you that much as a gift for this task, chef. A smile spread across your face. My gender never matched my body, no matter how I felt. Mom used to joke it was because she ate too many mushrooms, so I became like them. So, Enoki, like her favorite. The phoenix plucked a feather and placed it in Enoki's mouth. A freezing warmth built into her chest and spread out to every part. Soon, it caused a blue fire to spread across her form, making her feel heavy again. Her hair fell down into place as the flame burned out into a slightly gray smoke. The song rose as if wishing to not be interrupted. Now, my gift. You need clothing that can change with you. The phoenix fluttered its wings, causing the embers to flare up and slowly reform into clothing. In brilliant blues and oranges came the coat with the large, heavy shoulder pads. A snug, dark blue leather vest with copper fasteners made the top feel form-fitting, only giving a hint of a waist and the barest suggestion of a chest that might have been. As Enoki looked down, Zay could see the dark orange, almost brown pants, just as form-fitting as the vest. What surprised here was the flaring out of an asymmetrical skirt that appeared to be resting on top. Brown, laced-up leather boots completed the outfit. The fractured mirror spoke with two voices, giggling out of sync and full of discord. Our gift! Our gift! As shards of glass and mirror flew at Inoki, Here's first instinct was to dive out of the way. The phoenix let out a short cry before turning and breathing its blue flame, melting the pieces and causing them to land just shy of the new boots. It walked over and put the still cooling pieces on the palm of the two gloves, creating a small oval in each. These will become the tools you need to prepare and gather what you need for the meals. Right. Handy. Inoki ignored the giggles as the next rumbling voice spoke. Give here the song of understanding, just the beginning. Zay is not ready for more yet. The most beautiful song came out of the silver beak of the phoenix. Words from languages of the 8 races filled Here's Mine. Inoki could see each race that Zay would have to meet and find, what their lands were like. The stories of the world became part of all that Zay had ever known. Even a small town entered Hear Mine. A place to call home, perhaps. Long Fingers extended its hands, the most normal thing here besides the table. As the fingers opened, there was a pair of curtains. One was gray, while the other was a gentle yellow. Next to them, a brown leather backpack with a simple flame carved into it. You will need a way to carry supplies. Your food will spoil or become too heavy. Hang the curtains to enter the storage rooms. The gray will hold the food to the exact moment that it was placed inside. In the yellow, things will continue to age and ripen. Right. Is that everything I need? Yes, little chick. Any more gifts will hinder more than help. Read the list in the bag and know that it will change based on where you are. You must gather everything needed before the feast. Find the flock that will help you. I'm allowed help. Inoki carefully looked around to see if any of the voices disagreed. Zay quickly packed away the curtains and put on the backpack to leave. Due to that, Zay didn't notice the table fading away below their feet, and the tired and now slightly ashen phoenix starting to take off. And how will I learn to use these gifts? By kicking you out of the nest, little one. Inoki saw the beings had disappeared into misty clouds and blue sky. Wait, what? Spread your wings quickly. Falling won't kill you, but the sudden stop will hurt. Inoki felt gravity pull down on their now heavy form as they began to plummet through the bitterly cold air and frozen misty clouds. Now, here only thought was how much gods must really suck, and Zay felt a bit glad Zay had been agnostic before this. And that is the end of chapter 1.
Before we go to the next chapter,
How
I want
do?
to say that in many ways, I sometimes regret making there be 2 curtains. I am constantly having to double check which color is which because I keep forgetting.
That is the best part about having just a side little thing that gives you those quick, wait, what does this do again?
Right?
Those are the little things behind the scenes. We forget what stuff do in our stories all the time.
I literally just go, okay, wait, chapter 1, what did it say? Right, okay.
Which is accurate to how writing works. Especially the longer the story, the harder it is to remember all that.
And I'll also say I chose to start the story this way because, one, I did not feel like dealing with anyone who is not going to respect Inoki's pronouns by going with whatever assigned gender Inoki had back on Earth. So I was like, no, nobody gets to know. Ever. And even flashbacks are kept very gender neutral. So you're not sure. And the other was I just thought it was the best to just send Inoki kicked out of the sky. Here's a little explanation, but we're just sending you out now.
I do have to say, I do quite like the way chapter 1 ends with, so what now? Oh, we're just going to kick you out. Wait, what? And then being like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't actually believe in gods, because man, do you suck. That is a great tone. And I have to say, honestly, and I thought this when I first read it, this is so obviously a comedy from the first chapter. You.
I was trying to write a drama, and I'm going to tell the stream now. In my head, I was trying to channel like the action scenes found in things like One Piece, Dragon Ball, Dungeon Menchie. And as soon as I pointed that out to Nelia, and because Nelia was like, I thought I was giving you editing advice based on it being a comedy. Was it a drama? And I was like saying that, and then I was pinching my nose a little bit as I realized, and Nelia was like, Hugh, those are comedies.
They are. And yeah, no, it wasn't meant to be a comedy, as Hugh just explained. They were going for action fantasy drama, and instead wrote action fantasy comedy, because that's where all their inspiration was from.
And then people informed me I write really, really good comedies and that I'm funny. So now it's everybody's problem.
I don't think anyone here is complaining about that. But now we'll go ahead and go into chapter 2. Actually, ads are about to start, so we'll have a quick ad break before we get into chapter 2. That way I can work on eating, because everyone knows I don't eat before my streams. So ad break.
Well, you need your foods.
I'm gonna eat my foods. It would have been really smart to eat before a stream when we're talking about food stuff. So yay, everyone.
Yeah.
All my subs get to listen to me eat.
And all the subs get to hear, have snacks ready when you read my story. I've been told I've made people too hungry.
If I remember, since we're looking at the printed version, all of the recipes are at the end, right?
Correct.
Whereas if you're reading along on Tapas, the recipes are in the chapter the recipe shows up in.
Yeah, about every 5-ish chapters, give or take.
So that is a
Sometimes
slight difference for anyone who's here during the ad break or on the YouTube side. Ninja,
Also,
you need to remember your snacks.
Yeah, Ninja, have snacks.
Ninja is on YouTube watching the stream, so you cannot see their comments on Twitch chat.
Oh, that reminds me. I should check this. No, I think it has 4 more minutes to rest before. Yeah, it's been like 4 more minutes.
Okay.
My bread needs to go into the oven soon.
Yay. We have another minute on ads as I shove food into my mouth.
By the way, the first ad was about a stock pot and ordering things to cook with. And now it's a laptop.
Oof.
And now it's a phone.
It's
a phone taking a picture of a coffee machine. They're paying attention to what we're talking about.
As one should. They know we're talking about food.
Gotta make everybody hungry.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I was sadly not a contest winner. I did make it to top 25, but it was the top 10 that were winners. I did win a different one, though. Oh, sorry. There we go.
All right. Ads are over. To continue with what was happening, someone asked if this was the Tapas contest winner, and I will let Hugh finish answering that question.
Yeah. So, in the Action Fantasy contest, I was not the winner, but I did make it to top 25, which is still a very big honor. And I did actually, in their romance contest the year before, make it into top 50 and got a non exclusive contract for my novel Romance Splits. So I was very proud of that. I will admit, it is the probably lowest performing premium novel they have, but it's kind of niche. So, I mean, we can't be too mad about it. And I'm so proud of the story I wrote.
I was gonna say, just the fact that you have at least gotten to the semifinals in two different Tapas contests is pretty good, honestly.
It
There's not
really
many
is.
people who can say that.
I'm very proud of that. Especially since the romance one, I'll admit, I hadn't published a solo writing thing on Tapas before, but I had done work on my comics with my husband, and there were people, we're not going to say who, but there had been people in the past who were like, "Well, you're a comic writer, you're not like a real writer. You know, it's good. You still do work, but it's not like you do the hard work for the comic." Which I'm never going to say that I work harder than my husband works harder than me, because he swears up and down he would have plot holes galore if he was in charge of the story. Um, but you know, it was a hit to the ego, and then a lot of friends kept building me up, and I was like, I'm gonna try and write. I'm gonna write the novel because I have an idea, and I have a romance story that I want to see out there that isn't really written. So,
And hey, you got into Tapas Premium, so that says a lot.
oh yeah,
And yes, we comic writers are real writers,
we are.
very much so. There is a big difference between writing for comics and writing typical novels, but there also is a lot of overlap. Hugh probably understands that just as well. I've talked about it before since I am a game dev as well. Some of you guys know that I have a game out on Steam. And there is some
Mm-hmm.
overlap between regular writing and writing for games. I've written for all three. So maybe one day I can make that one of our Friday writing workshops and talk about what it's like to write for different mediums. Because there is different expectations, different needs, different formats that work better for different mediums. So, like,
Oh
you
yeah,
can't write for a game like you would for a comic, like you would a regular novel.
very true.
But yes, comic writers are just as valid. We, if you're writing, and especially if you're writing any sort of long format, there's so much overlap. You're writing a story. You're writing a novel. It just may not look like a novel unless you do some changes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the comic that we started off with, there's no way we could ever make it a novel because it's totally dependent on colors being symbolic, and you have to kind of see the colors as they appear. So,
But it is still, in effect, a novel.
oh yeah,
It just doesn't work in the novel format. And I've talked about before, I have a video on my YouTube channel about how different formats fit different kinds of stories, and not every story works in every format.
hmm,
Because sometimes the visuals are half of the story, and they only work that way. But all right, let us jump into chapter 2, Eclipse Start. Oh no, I did the French thing. I did the French thing.
y'all will notice I love puns.
Oh, and again, you thought this wasn't a comedy.
I was trying to break up the tension. I was like, I don't want this to be depressing all the time. I need just a little bit of sweet here and there to make it, tolerable.
And again, you thought this wasn't a comedy. All right. Skydiving seemed terrifying to Anoki her whole life. Jumping out of a plane with only a little piece of fabric to keep you from splatting upon the ground below, not to mention the earlier beginner jumps. Those ones where you're strapped yourself to some random person, their junk touching your back through a jumpsuit. You hoped the parachute would deploy. And according to your cousin, you couldn't even hear anything like the movie suggested. The whole thing seemed like a very exciting death wish for people that liked uncomfortable closeness with others. At this particular moment, Anoki would have loved to be worrying if the person strapped to her back was a creep. Even her own screams couldn't be heard over the wind. As they flailed her arms about as her feet fruitlessly tried to run in any direction but down. O creation, I am going to die. Then everyone else was die because I was flatter than last week's clip video. I never even got to try this world's dishes and die. An unheard scream escaped Here's lips as the wind suddenly forced Inoki's body sideways and upwards toward the mostly clear blue sky. Zay tried to make sense of the world, a difficult task due to the wind forcing here to tumble in every direction, even folding in half backwards. Wait, why am I folded in half? With great effort, Anoki tried to focus her thoughts and turn her head, a task that was proving far more difficult than it should. That was when Zay finally saw it. Anoki was truly flat. Not paper thin, but like something from the old school cartoons Anoki saw as a child. Just a tiny bit of thickness, but spread out. No wonder turning her head felt so hard. Just like the clip I was thinking about. If I just focus, I can fix this, right? There was no choice but to try as Zay had to pick up speed and was rapidly heading toward a still distant thundercloud, as Zay could hear the rumbling from where Zay was. Anoki stared at her arm, willing it to inflate. A mistake to focus on one part, as the increased weight and lack of surface area made her spin and head downwards once again. Zay could see a rapidly approaching smattering of green trees and blue rivers. Zay was having trouble focusing on filling the rest of her body. If this was all in her mind, then Zay just had to focus and have a clear image before hitting the ground. Zay brought their inflated arm to her gingerbread face and carefully put her thumb into her mouth. If it was good enough for a cartoon, it was good enough for this world. One hard blow, and her whole body inflated, making a small pop as bones and organs fell into place.
I want to pause here for just a second.
Yep.
I want to say right here, I had people inform me that this was a very comedic section because of how it was described. I'm like, but I was doing body horror, I thought.
This does not sound like body horror at all. You're literally referencing a cartoon. Weeb, thank you for the 2,000 points to feed the infinite hunger. My hunger only grows. Oh my gosh. You literally reference the whole cartoon idea of like they put their thumb in their mouth and blow up their body, and you thought you were doing body horror?
I was remembering that one part from Who Framed Roger Rabbit towards the end with
Also,
the judge.
Great movie. I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But the creepy part about that is when he's being melted. It's not the flattening. It's the melting that was creepy. And the way he was just like screaming the whole time. The flattening stuff was funny.
I'm not pretending. For all of eternity, that this whole thing about the novel is going to be the funniest thing about the series.
But it's
No matter how
interesting
funny
to
the book
hear
is.
that you took this whole section about the inflating and thought it was body horror. But at the same time, you were literally referencing a cartoon. And failed to see how that came off as humorous instead of frightening. I'm writing down notes. What not to do when writing body horror. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is an amazing movie, Ninja. Absolutely. Love that movie. Always will. Like, I love the whole thing between Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit. Will always be the greatest subversion of time. And my favorite joke will always be the booby trap joke. If you don't get it, go watch the movie.
Definitely watch the movie.
I am not explaining the booby trap joke, but if you don't get it, watch the movie. And even if you haven't seen the movie, I promise you know who Jessica Rabbit is. Because everyone knows who Jessica Rabbit is.
She wasn't bad. She was just drawn that way.
She was made as a caricature of how people were sexualizing the feminine body in cartoons and became the icon for sexualizing the feminine body in cartoons. She was made to make fun of it and literally became the icon for it. You can't get like more ironic than that. But anyway, next. What was it your grandfather used to say? If you find yourself falling, you might as well flap your wings and try to fly. Zay closed her eyes and focused on just the rushing wind and her own arms. As Anoki pulled her arms away from her sides, Zay could feel something else pulling out as well. Zay wasn't going to think too hard about that. Just make her body like a bat or a glider. Anoki then tried to throw her legs downwards so Zay could be upright. It was a bit too hard and Zay started to tumble some. After some more furious flapping, Zay finally managed to slow her descent. A bit more experimenting, and Anoki began to hang in place for the most part. A good thing, since the smattering of green now looked like individual trees. Zay was pretty sure there were some things moving down below as well. A careful look around showed no visible roads. There was maybe a trail, but Anoki didn't know for sure. The only thing to do now was to try and fly in any direction and hope for the best. There was a lake in the distance. If nothing else, that meant water or maybe a small settlement. Zay just had to hope Zay had the energy to get there. As evening fell, Anoki felt like Zay was still so far, away from the lake Zay had seen. At least it was much bigger, but a growling stomach made her progress much slower. With a heavy sigh, Anoki started slowing her flapping down in hopes of landing safely. Safety flew away, startled by an arrow that barely missed her head. The sudden jolt of fear made Anoki freeze in place. Gravity took advantage as Zay started to scream. All that hard work, and this was how Zay was going to die? Anoki had an idea and tried to turn into as tight of a ball as possible, like a hedgehog. Be a spiky hedgehog ball. A big, spiky hedgehog with quills sticking out. Maybe stick to something. Anything. As her bones and flesh twisted and contorted to the idea, Anoki hit the first few branches of a tree. Zay bounced around, breaking a few of the branches on the way down. As soon as a bone snapped in two, it would bend and bend back into place in time for another bone to break. Zay could feel the pain from each injury and mending, which in turn made it harder and harder to keep focused as that was replaced by a near constant cursing and cries. By the time Zay landed on the ground, the concentrated needed to keep the form melted away, and all that remained was an aching, mostly human body. Well, that, and a giant dead bird landing on half of the top of Anoki, knocking the wind out of her. I think it's over here. It should be a big one. The rushing footsteps and snapping twigs got closer as Anoki struggled to try and get out from underneath the bird. When Zay looked up, her eyes were met with that of a tall, thin person with long, pointed ears going out to the sides. They wore green and brown robes that almost made them disappear into the surrounding foliage. Their striking black eyes took in her form, and they let out a gasp. You idiots! You nearly killed a human with our dinner! Are you all right? They started to lift up the horse-sized bird, its black beak scraping the dirt as it moved. I'm okay, I think. I'm Minoki. My pronouns are Zay and here. Zay winced as Zay got to Here's feet, trying to avoid the pool of blood that was forming from the bird's fatal wound. And right now, maybe ow and fuck. What's yours? The being, which Anoki was now recalling was an elf, looked at Here with a mix of amusement and confusion. Really, you aren't positive you can tell, little human? I'm not Anoki paused. Now that Zay was standing, it was fairly obvious that if Zay were her normal 5'9" the elf was at least 8.5. Not little for a human. I'm on the taller side. Motsan, stop teasing the obviously lost human. Another slightly more tanned elf came up. They tucked their silky smooth ebony hair behind their ear. That is Motan, and is a male. I am Litiana, and a female, as I assume that is what you were speaking of. It's rare to see a human using dwarven pronouns. Oh, they match my soul. Had it checked by accident recently. Zay hoped that would make enough sense. Motan just grinned wide. showing perfectly even and straight teeth. Unnaturally so, honestly. He set the bird down and gave a small bow. How lucky for you. Many don't get the chance to meet a blessed one to confirm for others what is within their hearts. Are you traveling alone? Yeah, it's sort of a quest thing, I suppose. I got selected recently. Anoki started pulling out branches and leaves from her hair. Then allow us to feed you tonight, dear human. Perhaps you can share your quest, if you don't mind elven food. Litiana carefully took a leaf from her head. Anoki's eyes went wide, a grin spreading across her face that could only be matched by a child being given a new pet. I would love to. I've never had elven food before. Maybe I can help a bit? Some chuckles came from a bit further behind as more elves dressed in green and tans and browns came out and started taking different sides of the bird. Within moments, they and Motan were all carrying it past Litiana, who was putting a gentle hand on the back of Anoki's head. You are certainly welcome to do so. If you can, at least. Litiana gave a small smile as Anoki's stomach growled loudly. In the meantime, you may require something to eat so you don't get excited and start eating feathers. Blushing, Anoki gave a small nod. If only she knew about her day. Maybe. Oh my gosh, it's another pun. It's another chapter pun.
Always puns. Puns forever.
Okay, there was a moment here that made me laugh, and I had to fight not to like laugh through it. This part where she said, "I'm okay," and I it's like what their pronouns were, and then it's like right now maybe ow and fuck.
That was an intentional joke. That was an intentional joke on my part.
How could it not be an intentional joke? It's absolutely hilarious.
I just want to make that clear, given how much I apparently didn't realize I was doing in the first 7 chapters. And then when I get to chapter 8, I'm like, oh, well, everybody keeps saying I'm writing comedy. So chapter 8, I'd like tried hard. And
I mean, like, that is such a good, like, I just fell from the sky because the gods kicked me out. Like, hey, here's my name, here's my pronouns, and by the way, I'm fucking in pain. What about you? Like, perfect sarcastic level humor that is, like, right up my alley.
Inoki had to be an assistant manager at a big box store. So, you know.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you're working as a manager in a store, you've got to have some sort of sense of humor, or you can't work in retail. From what I've heard, never worked retail myself, luckily.
How did you avoid that? I had to.
I've been working in food and beverage since I was 16, so I've always worked.
Fair.
I've always worked in hospitality instead, which ain't much
No,
better,
no,
honestly. I worked at the theme
no
parks
wonder
in
you
Florida.
like my story.
We talked about this. I'm also a pastry chef,
Yes,
so
I know.
I absolutely love
I
the
know.
story. All right, chapter 3, No Poultry Task. As they approached the fire, Anoki took a moment to take everything in. It had been hard to take stock of what the season was like in the sky. All of the clothing seemed to be designed for warmer weather. Zay was going to have to figure out how to explain that Zay didn't know what season it was, possibly carefully based on the various daggers, silvery bows, and swords that were glinting in the light of the fire. If Inoki accidentally made herself look crazy, some of those lovely weapons might end up pointed at here. Inoki, please, don't feel nervous. We know for humans it can be unsettling seeing us all standing. You'll feel better when we are all sitting down. Litiana's ears, which had been sticking straight out from her head, twitched up slightly and rotated backwards towards a group of elves that were speaking softly. With a sudden turn, her eyes became pure black whilst facing the shadows. Litiana's voice shook the branches. You will not be rude to our guest. Get the other birds and pull the feathers. Her sight was locked on this very imposing woman, noticing small golden cracks around her eyes before they disappeared into the light of the fire. The black eyes changed, shrinking down, revealing the whites and silver iris. I probably don't take offense. I'm sure whatever they said I've been called worse. She sighed and sat down as one of the 5 giant birds were brought over. Something in the back of Anoki's mind told her they were twilight ravens, known for flying at dawn and dusk looking for prey. Some of said prey included humanoids, which made them fair game for any traveling bands to eat by most cultural standards. That is not the point. We are a part of a cultural exchange. But some of our younger members don't understand why we do this so frequently. They still remember their own parents doing this just a mere 35 years ago. With each word, a feather was gently plucked and set aside. They do not understand how quickly the world of flickers like you change. Inoki paused, plucking the feathers a moment, struggling even to get out a few at this size. Flickers? There was another ear twitch. Zay looked around and noticed that, despite what the elves were doing, there were many whose ears were now turned towards here. It was like watching a cat listen for the opening of a can of food. Litiana kept pulling the feathers as the others came over to help. We are the longest lived race. At one time, we had one so old we could claim that they saw the other races being created one by the gods. Because we live so long, we rarely birth new life, meaning new ideas come slower to us. Thus, many of you are but a flicker of a candle in our eyes, a spark, if you will. But because your lives are so much shorter than our own, your innovations and ideas change rapidly. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Ah! Inoki got a big feather out, falling on her butt while waving it above her head. This looks harder. This is harder than it looks. A small smile crossed her lips, showing the 2 perfect teeth again. As it were, I pushed for cultural visits to start happening more frequently. They used to be once a century. So, are you leaving to meet one of the other races? Yes. But if you are on a quest from the gods, I fear we cannot help you long. Such missions are dangerous to bystanders, but a meal, perhaps a map, and some guidance we can do. Her silver eyes glanced at Anoki's hand, still holding the large feather. Perhaps with the explanation of how you survived your fall. Your leather armor is not thick enough to prevent broken bones. Maybe once the food is cooking? I promise to help. A low growl was heard behind her head. Zay turned to find herself face to face with a wolf, large enough to hold the 8-foot-tall elves and their packs on its back. It gave a small snort in her face, appearing to debate if it was looking at dinner or a friend. Reg, calm down. That human is helping to pull out the feathers. The new elf slid down. Ambassador, we have checked the area. Everything is safe. Good. We start pulling by hand, but if you have the mages, use some magic to help with the feathers. Zay is very hungry. In fact, do you have some of the rations? Oh, yes, ma'am. He reached into a pouch and held it out in his hand. Though the hard roll was big enough to make a sandwich out of it, in his hand, it looked like an adult offering a child candy. Anoki took it and carefully started to eat, missing the watchful gaze of her host. As they ate, several of the elves came over. Glancing over on YouTube, Ninja said, reading the comments on Tapas, I'm guessing for chapter 2, everyone agrees with me about what I said. Again, for anyone who is new to the stream, you can read along on Tapas. Link is in the pinned comment on the Twitch side. If I need to pop it into YouTube chat again, I will. Just let me know.
Now you're making me want to go look at the comments again.
I mean, it's your story. We're on chapter 3. Where was I? Okay. As they ate, several of the elves came over, removing gloves to show runes tattooed in black ink starting to glow as they sang. Within moments, hundreds of star-filled hands appeared in the air and started grabbing at the feathers. Many feathers were placed inside various bags and others thrown into the fire to help with the flames. Anoki couldn't figure out how the elves could stand the stench as the burning feathers turned to ash. As soon as one bird was done, Litiana raised her hand and made a sharp cutting motion to the side. Everyone instantly silenced. All right, mages, rest. Everyone else, get a knife and first gut the birds as we practice. Give the organs and head to the wolves. Everything else, we prep for ourselves. She looked to Anoki, who was quickly shoving the last of the bread into her mouth. are you able to help? Where did that knife come from? Unable to get the words out around the food, Anoki followed the gaze of the elf to her right hand. There was a boning knife. It was the perfect size for a bird this size, with its blade a bit longer than her hand. Ooh. The handle had a blue and gold inlay. Swallowing the hard roll quickly, Anoki spoke up. My hand? Ooh, we got a ban evader. I gotta ban someone.
Oh no.
No advertising in my chat. You guys don't get to see it because I have it set up so that it doesn't show unless I approve it. No advertising in my chat. I don't need viewers that desperately. We have fun here. All right. The elf from before frowned. It wasn't there before. I would like to know what kind of magic that was. So would I, mumbled Anoki as they went up to the bird. Zay took a moment to look over the plucked bird before speaking up. I've never butchered a bird this big, but I think I know where to start. So, we want it in smaller pieces or a particular cut? We separate the dark meat from the white, then separate the spine, wings, and breast, and set the feet aside from the legs and thigh. We will be cooking these all different ways. She gestured to how the others were beginning to cut away at the meat and bone, but the head and organs first. The wolves need to eat before we do. Right. Zay went up to the head and looked at the eye of the bird. Zay always felt a bit bad for animals, but in nature they would die to predators or illness or plain old bad luck. And this wasn't for sport, but for needed food. Zay closed her eyes for just a moment and proceeded to do the only prayer Zay had ever did. May your energy return to the world. If you have a world beyond this, may it be good to you. The world is cruel. Death should not be. When here eyes opened, a few elves had gathered around, watching carefully now, not even hiding their nosiness. There was nothing to do now but simply begin butchering the bird, using the knife to cut through the soft flesh of the neck and then between the neck bones. As soon as the head rolled off to the side, the eyes staring to the sky, the wolf from earlier padded over. With its tail wagging, it took the head and began to work on crushing the skull in its teeth. Anoki missed most of the mess that caused by turning to the rest of the body, trying to focus on what Zay needed to do. The other elves helped pull out the organs from the huge bird and carried them away to the other wolves. By the time the chest cavity was empty, other elves had already started cutting the feet and carving up the rest of it. Moton gently pulled here back, his golden eyes full of worry and concern. Young Flicker, I don't know what magic you're doing, but you need to rest yourself before you burn out. Okay. Zay looked down to see the blood all over her body. Maybe a bath is a good idea? After how you blessed these animals, we can do such a minor thing. He waved his hand, humming as stark dust scattered all over here. As soon as it landed on here, it quickly spread and made the blood disappear off everything except the blade. No sooner did Anoki think Zay should put it away, it suddenly melted in metallic goo and entered the golden ring on her glove. Zay stared for a moment, shocked that it had come from there. Granted, the godlike beings did say it was going to be whatever tools were needed, but Zay didn't think it would change with the mere thought, just like the shape-shifting before. Moton's eyes narrowed at the word shape-shifting. I will want to talk to you directly once the meal is prepared. I get the feeling you were not told enough for your quest. For now, you should go through your pack, before the others try to do so for you. Wordlessly, Anoki nodded and sat down a ways from the butchery. When Zay opened her pack, a dark blue paper was sitting on top. Strange, how Zay was certain it wasn't there before. Carefully, Zay opened it and looked at the golden writing upon it. Little chick, I hope you read this upon landing and before you meet others, or things may become a little complicated. Consider this a shopping list, if you will. It will show you the things you need once you meet the needed race that can provide it. Keep in mind, these races will not give up these items easily. Stating the gods demand it will sometimes make it harder. Find your flock, and they can help you. no matter how far apart you are from each other. Prove yourself with this feast, little chick, and fly. Oh my gosh, marinating over this.
So fun thing with the this episode with the butchering. I actually had someone come up to me and say, "Hey, the chapter is really good, but one of my friends couldn't handle the animal butchering, would have actually preferred to have known ahead of time." So I ended up putting a content warning on this chapter after the fact. And just because I was like, okay, well, maybe other people would be bothered by the butchering scene. It doesn't bother me because I'm like, okay, it's cutting up meat, but I guess I can kind of see it.
I mean, for me, you really didn't go into that much detail. Like, it feels very tame for a butchering scene. Like, you could have made it worse for me to be like, this needs to be behind a content warning. But some people are very sensitive to any kind of content. I've had people complain about me just having characters make out and say that it needs to be behind a sexual filter. And I'm like, it's kissing. And it's not that bad.
Yeah. I was kind of like, well, you know what? I'm not going to put it behind a mature tag during the contest, but I was like, but I can at least put a thing at the top that says heads up, animal butchering described. And then and people were happy. And I was like, okay. Most people really didn't care. They were like, oh, animal butchering described. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you would kind of expect it considering the tones of this story that there is likely going to be animal butchering. There's likely. And again, I don't feel like you went into as much detail as you could have. It was very respectful, very glossed over. Hello, duck.
The kitty! It is the good duck, unlike the 5 ducks we had earlier.
Oh, don't remind me about those ducks. Don't remind me. Oh, we're about to have an ad break. I will take this as a chance to finish my dinner.
Oh.
This is a good time to stretch, hydrate.
And for me to put stuff in the oven.
Yes. And we will be back in 2 minutes. I'm going to finish my salmon. I'm glad you like it, Weeb. You should totally sub to it on Tapas and give our good friend Squish Hugh all the likes. As I've said before, the story is free to read on Tapas. And by reading the story, my story, or any of my other friends' stories, you are supporting the author and giving us much needed views, subs, all lovely stats that Tapas looks at to decide if our stories are well liked or not. Speaking of, while we're here, one of my stories got featured, if I can get to the thing. Since we're during an ad break, and this is technically an ad, my story was shouted out today in the community shoutouts. One of my romance fantasy stories, The Hybrid Mate. So yay! The story got
I'm glad you
out.
like the story.
So this story did get shouted out today in the community shout out. I'm very happy. And I think a new chapter actually just came out today. Chapter 14. Which means I need to schedule new chapters after the stream for all of my stories. So yeah, this story came out at the beginning of end of June? End of July, actually, end of July. So it's been up for about a month. But yeah, I'm very happy.
Woohoo!
It's in the romance fantasy category, so I don't expect it to do as well as some of my other stories not in that category, because romance fantasy is kind of full and very busy. But I'm glad to get the shout out under, I think, new and noteworthy is the community shout out today. Yeah, new and noteworthy. And there are actually a lot of novels in the shout out, which also makes me happy. Sometimes these shout outs can be heavily dominated by comics, but it's nice to see there are novels. Also, doesn't this break the rules? This cover, because it doesn't have the title on it?
So the rules technically are more recommendations. You don't have to have the title,
I'm pretty sure it's.
but they wanted to.
I'm pretty sure it's required when you're like creating a new series. It says it has to have the title.
I'll
Like
have to look that
just
up.
to see. Yeah, it says you have to have it. Must be included.
Huh.
So technically, they shouted out a story that breaks the rules. I don't know. Anyway, ad break is over. Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to. I'm going to take a sip really first, and then we're going to start chapter 4. I have finally finished my dinner
It's so
of
fun.
salmon. And we start
Yum.
with another pun. Marinating over this.
To be fair, it's not as much of a pun as the others because sometimes you do let things marinate in your head.
Yes, marinate is has multiple meanings, both its cooking term and what it means to just kind of think over something. This is nuts. Anoki mumbled to herself as they looked down at the list. It was made to look like a proper checklist, at least, with most of the lines empty for now. In total, there were 8 races listed. Humans were listed first. From the information given to here, humans weren't considered that special other than they were a bit of a jack of all trades races and the most likely to travel far and wide for new experiences and flavors. From what Zay could remember, there were times humans tried to take over areas, but the other race's strengths kept them from becoming too colonizer-ish. So, excuse me. Instead, humans tended to make treaties and trade agreements with the other longer-lived races. The rest of the information felt like vague stories the humans told each other. It made sense, Anoki supposed. If Zay was supposed to act like they came from this world, then having information from a human's lens would make the most sense. Next was the centaurs, known for being fairly social and friendly to visitors. Some suspected they didn't need to eat, living in the desert regions of the world. Next were dwarves, as a multi-gendered as the mushrooms Anoki named herself after. They lived deep in the mountains, and most of the visitors agreed their food was incredibly bland. Both of these races could be found somewhere near the elves, so at least it wouldn't be too far of a trek, in theory. The famous farmers, the gnomes, were next on the list. They were given credit for cultivating wheat and supposedly taming the battle-hungry orcs. This is where the stories in Hear Mine got a bit mixed up, as some of those same stories claimed the gnomes were servants to the orcs. Zay supposed they'd find out when the time came to meet them. Goblins were considered the most secretive. It was possible to find small outposts, but their actual settlements were next to impossible. These 3 were sometimes found near each other as well and had trade agreements. If nothing else, if Anoki found one, Zay could probably find the others. The next to last would be the harder. The dragon folk lived along the various coastlines of the world. From what Zay remembered from flying earlier, Anoki was nowhere near a coastline. It was said they could get the greatest and rarest seafood in the world. Some even claimed they raised great krakens for yearly feasts. At the bottom of the list were the elves. Zay couldn't help but wonder if these people should have been met last. While considered a very serious race, they were also the ones humans should be careful when attending parties for. Some humans got caught staying at lavish events for months, even years. The drink was so strong, guests didn't even realize they had been gone for more than a few short days. What was strange was what was written under their name. Drinks to be made. Blessed ingredient. Heaven's tear fruit and honey. Cursed ingredient. Sinner bound wood. This was at least a clue what Anoki was to make and bring to represent each race. A series of drinks. Maybe some wines or meads. Maybe even a beer from the stories floating around in her head. Anoki was glad to see Zay had some control over what was brought to the table at least. Hopefully it wasn't a test. Making it from a blessed ingredient made sense as well. But why would a god demand something cursed? As if on cue, Moton came back and glanced at the paper. I would put that away for now. I can help you later, but Litiana said you wish to help cook, and it would be wise to make sure we aren't adding anything poisonous to you. Oh, sure thing. Anoki quickly folded the paper back up and carefully placed it inside the bag. With the blink of an eye, the envelope disappeared from her sight. How can I help? At this point, everyone was carefully preparing to roast or stew the various parts of the bird, having applied seasonings or local nuts and berries to the dishes. Meanwhile, the wolves all sat to their own meals, looking quite pleased with themselves. Litiana's ears twitched and rotated towards Inoki as they walked up. Ah, yes, we were trying to decide how best to prepare the legs. The wolves don't like them as much and need the organ meat more than we do. As such, we traditionally cook this part of the bird for ourselves. Sadly, we do not have any way to steam them. The leaves in this area are not big enough. Inoki looked at the cleaned and declawed feet as some of the elves carefully cut them at the joints so they'd be easier to eat. Oh, I've had chicken feet before. That can be amazing. Litiana arched a brow, saying nothing as Motan spoke up. We could make stew again. They'd be ready by morning. Perhaps. It seems to be a waste, though. We have the wine to make the marinade, not to mention the centane and the rock salt. Anoki missed Litiana's careful gaze as they looked at their glove. Maybe with some careful focus, Zay could make what her father used on camping trips. Zay closed her eyes, remembering those camping trips in the old beat-up conversion van. He'd take out a pot and make a metal steamer tray inside that could fold up neatly. When Zay was young, Zay loved to play with it and how it opened and closed. While picturing this, Anoki suddenly felt like they were being pulled in two, with one arm being forced upward as Zay was lifted off the ground. The other arm was dragged down by a heavy weight. When her eyes opened, there was a huge pot that was now tipping over, and a large metal steamer dragging in the dirt like some unwilling boat. The elves quickly grabbed both and helped ease the pot down before it crushed Inoki. All eyes were now on the little shapeshifter. Anoki cleared her throat before speaking up. I have enchanted items I was given for the trip. Guess I dreamed a bit too big. It wasn't a lie, at least. Will it last the entire time? Litiana was already tilting up the pot to make sure it was large enough. Anoki bit her lip a little. I think so. Then we cook. Everyone, quickly, bring the wine and rock salt. Tonight, we will have a proper traveling delicacy. As if ordered by a queen, everyone scrambled to the wagons. Someone pulled a barrow out from one and a few bags from another. Before anyone could say anything, Anoki was picked up like a toddler and set on the shoulders of another elf with caramel hair. Zay heard someone shout, "Catch!" Thankfully, Anoki saw in time and quickly got into the rhythm of catching meat and dumping it into the pot. Other elves used a bit of magic to carefully pour in rock salt, some black seeds that looked like peppercorn and sugar. Once everything was covered, an elf did the cleaning spell and climbed in, carefully mixing everything up and making sure it was properly marinating. The elves got out a different pot, one of several, and brought it over to Anoki. Zay was quickly given a bag of what looked like blue head of garlic, the size of your fist, and some long purple roots. Peel the sono roots and drop the skins back into the bag. Chop the roots into small chunks and take off the paper skin off mere cloves. Anoki couldn't help but grin. Others were taking time to crush the dried red pancake-looking fruits as others poured a small amount of brown liquid they could only assume was the sauce mentioned earlier. Right. It didn't take long for the pungent roots and cloves to be prepared and put into the pot. Zay had seen some elves add in rock salt and some sort of paste. One could only hope they'd tell the secrets of these items later. Once Anoki's tasks were done, and in the absence of a new one, Zay started going around trying to taste the different spices and herbs and liquids being added in. Zay watched as everything was pounded into a mash before more liquid was added, and it started to cook properly. The recipe reminded her of one from Korea, but with some of the spices creating a warmth that went to her head as well as her chest. By the time the feet were done marinating, the elves brought the shapeshifter over to the pot again. How do you use this folding metal disc? Oh, put it in over the liquid, and from there put the meat in. You can close it up if you need to, but I think the pot has a lid over there we can use instead. Magic hands quickly and carefully lifted the feet out, replacing them with the metal steamer. Anoki watched as a quick burst of magic sterilized it. It was nice to see food safety was a thing in this world, too. Once everything was settled, the lid was placed on top and Anoki was brought to a spot near the food to rest. Other magic users were brought to the same place, and all of them were given some gathered fruits and nuts. As those disappeared into Anoki's mouth, Zay savored all of the scents in the air. No matter where Zay went, Zay always felt at home when there was some cooking going on around here. In this strange world, with beings who towered over here and magic abilities Anoki didn't understand yet, this was no different. And that's chapter 4. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to mute if Hugh has anything to say about the chapter.
Okay, sorry about that. If y'all heard my kid, he didn't realize I was on the chat. So, um, I tried to focus so hard on how everything smells and tastes when you're cooking in a kitchen. Um, I personally love the smell of different seasonings. I like tasting them. Not everyone is to my taste, obviously, but Anoki's a bit more adventurous than I am too. And honestly, just like Anoki, I love it when I can be around cooking and I can cook myself. It's very comforting to me, actually. Even if it's stressful to like cook, say, a Thanksgiving dinner, I just adore cooking for other people. So,
I think that's a shared thing because I also enjoy cooking for others more than I enjoy cooking for myself. Yes, the story will make you very hungry, Weeb. You were warned like 2 chapters ago.
I always warn people because, yeah, go get snacks. Do you have snacks, Weeb? You should probably have some.
You need snacks for this story. This one will always make you hungry. But
Actually, there's a couple chapters that might not, but
I'm the same way. People always ask, as a baker, do I bake at home? And the answer used to be not at all because it was just me and I don't like cooking for myself. Now I will sometimes make small treats, but usually I make them for my kid, not for myself. Because for me, a lot of the joy that comes from baking is making something and seeing someone else's face light up. I bake for other people. When I'm baking for myself, I don't get as into it. Excuse me. Although I do make things for myself. Like this past weekend at my job, we do celebrate all the birthdays at the last Friday of the month, and I made an apple pie cake, which is my favorite recipe. I make it for my birthday every year. And I made it for the seniors because they wanted to do an apple cake for August. And I was like, I have an apple pie cake that's to die for. And just everyone loving it, people asking for extra slices of cake. That's why I like baking. That's it. It's never for myself. It's the joy I get from seeing other people enjoy what I make. It's why I enjoy doing it. And so I definitely get that feeling. But I also do not like cooking for myself. Yes, apple pie cake. It's a very simple cake. It's basically a all wet, all dry cake. So you can just look up any plain, all wet, all dry, add cinnamon, and put apple pie filling between the layers. That's basically the cake. It's a very simple cake to make. The recipe is nothing special. It's just an all wet, all dry.
I like the excuse to try making new things. So whenever it's my birthday, I actually try to seek out new cake recipes or pastry recipes that I haven't tried making myself yet.
See, I do that when I'm experimenting again with making things for other people. Like when I like my job last year when I worked at a senior home, we had a guest who loved the baklava, and I had never made puff pastry from scratch, but I sure tried for her. It was like that was the nice thing about that job and having all different peoples from different cultures is making like little tastes of home for them because people don't think about that when seniors move to a senior home. They don't have kitchens. They're not allowed to cook for themselves. They're dependent on what's made for them. And, you know, they can start missing those little pieces of home that made home feel like home.
Yeah.
That's why I very much enjoyed that job and getting to make special things. Like we had a senior who couldn't eat anything hard, but I got into the habit of making vegan pudding for her. Not because she needed anything vegan, but because she liked the taste of the pudding. And I would make it so she could have it whenever she wanted it because she didn't often eat her meals, but she would eat the pudding. and it was better than nothing. And at least it didn't have that much sugar in it. Yeah, Ninja also says on YouTube they like cooking for others. I think it's a very special feeling when you cook for someone else and you can see them light up because they like it. And sometimes, like, people just taste things that you don't taste. Like, I'm not a cream cheese person, so whenever I have to make cheesecakes or cream cheese icing, I have to have someone else taste it. I do not like cream cheese like that. And I can't eat chocolate at all, but I still make chocolate desserts. I make truffles for my younger sister every year, which she will be
Aw.
happy because she's not pregnant this Christmas, so she can have alcohol in her truffle fillings again. Last Christmas she was pregnant, so she couldn't have any of that, but this year she can.
Oh.
Well, I figured if you have a sibling who knows how to make truffles from scratch, why are you going to pay, like, way too much money to get truffles from the store?
Exactly.
And I do custom flavors. I've gone out of my way to get the little alcohol bottles so I can make her the specific flavor she wants. But often she just wants, like, caramel. And so I'll go get, like, caramel liqueur and put that in the filling and make a sweet caramel filling with the liqueur in it. They're hard to ship, though. I have to get the refrigerated boxes, which sucks because those are so expensive. I'll be happy when she moves to the West Coast.
And then she can have it far more easily.
Well, it'll be less shipping because she'll be in Alaska and I'm in Seattle. But
True.
it's just expensive to ship to the from the West Coast to the East Coast because it's got to go cross country. Especially in a refrigerated box. I can't, like, it's not overnighting. I can't overnight it. At least if she's in Alaska, I can probably overnight some things. A lot closer. All right, it's time for All Steamed Up. Wow. Other pots of... I'm sorry. Like, every single chapter being a pun, it still wows me that you didn't think there was anything funny about this.
I was trying to break the tension.
Hugh, what are you doing to Ninja's phone?
Ninja was blowing up my phone first by liking and commenting on everything. I just did it back.
What are you guys doing over here?
A comment war, apparently.
Apparently. I got to get back on some of my binge reading. Other pots of stew and various roasting spits were set up and smelled almost ready. As it was, a few elves were coming out of the wolf-drawn wagons, rubbing their eyes and looking ready to take over some of the cooking tasks. All of them stopped and stared at the pot, ears twitching and turning as if checking if it was real. Anoki stifled a laugh. Well, at least someone in this place felt a fraction of the confusion they felt. Soon, the elves went over and started taking out the pieces of crow feet. They had a nice, subtle scent, overwhelmed by the overly spicy scent of the mashed and warmed sauce. Even the air felt sticky from all the awaiting flavor. The star-filled hands once again quickly went to work, mixing the pieces within the sauce. One fully coated the magic hands and then placed feet on the prepared cooking sticks and set over the separated cooking coals. The juices and sauce occasionally mixed and hit the coals with a brilliant sizzle. Anoki was struggling not to drool as some green tubers had been cooked in the skin were handed out to all of the elves. Moton smiled a bit. This is better with butter and some capotin? Capotin?
Capotin.
Okay, some capotin. But this is one of my favorites. It's sweet, then sour. Huh. A careful sniff only showed some sweetness. Anoki quickly took a bite. Sure enough, the fluffy texture gave a caramel-like sweetness. Zay puffed up a few times, trying to cool it in her mouth before feeling the sour melt into the back of her throat. It reminded her of a key lime. Not too sour, just a hint to really wake you up. A large grin crossed her face as Zay looked up. This is amazing. I've never had anything like this back home. Moton was biting into his as well. For a moment, the perfect teeth seemed to disappear into more jagged ones. It's worth having them. The feet will be ready in a moment. Oh, good. Zay looked at the other food being prepared. I wish I had room to try everything. I need to get my notebook so I can write this all down. Inoki trailed off, realizing the notebook wasn't here. Hell, her biological gendered organs weren't here anymore. The years of collected recipes and old composition books were back at her old apartment. Her brother would probably take and keep them. He always wanted to become a chef. Zay hoped it gave him the start he wanted. Maybe he'd find the set Zay started to copy for him. A gentle yet heavy hand landed on her shoulder. Anoki looked up, only just starting to realize how close to tears Zay was. Moton looked a little sad. It's all right. Later, you can tell me what happened to your book. I'm going to pause because I like this chapter. I like this chapter and I like this moment a lot because it's very often you see in any sort of isekai story, especially, is that the person is always just happy to leave their past life. I am guilty of this as well. I have written it into my stories. It is so nice to see a moment where a person isn't trying to run away from the life they had before, but the choice was out of their control. I very
Mhm.
much like this moment because we can
And
see
one
that Inoki is not upset. They aren't running away from an awful family or an awful life. They just had a moment where their life ended and they miss things from their old life because they enjoyed it.
and one of the things I hope I'm also conveying well is that Anoki is trying to make the best of the situation. They like your life was not a bad one, maybe not necessarily the one that they wanted, but wasn't a bad life. But at the same time, there's also positives that Anoki is getting to see, like finally being able to have a body that matches how they feels within their soul. And I think that was kind of important to show too. Like you can have this mix of emotions for your situation. You can have bits you're happy about, but then have bits that you're like, oh, I don't actually like this. And that's okay.
Yeah, because again, it's so common to see in isekai stories where the person is just like, oh, well, my life kind of sucked and all these bad things were happening. So here, I just want a chance at happiness. It's nice to have an isekai character who, like most, died through an accident of some sort, but wasn't trying to run away from anything. They weren't like, I wish I could start over, or this life sucks and I'm trying to make the best. Like, Anoki has things they miss. Their family would miss them. They were supporting their family's dreams. Like, where's everything perfect? No, that's life, but they weren't running away from the real world, and that's nice to see in an isekai because you don't see it very often. It's no need to be big sad for Anoki. It's a mixed bag, and that's often what
Yeah.
life is, a mixed bag.
Anoki will find joy in the life that Zay has been presented. But it's just like sometimes when you have to move due to circumstances or take a job you don't necessarily plan to or wanted to because life happened. You know, it's just in this case, it's a much bigger one because, oh, I can't go back at all.
Yeah, like Anoki was sitting down to enjoy a dish. Wow, can't get that word out. Like they were sitting down to eat something, didn't know they were having an allergic reaction to what they were eating, and it just happened. It happens all the time. People sit down to try something new and eat something they didn't know they were allergic to, and then unfortunately maybe pass away. That doesn't mean their life sucked. I mean, it also doesn't mean they got isekai'd into another world, but I mean, who knows? We don't know anymore. It's possible. But I think sometimes people forget, like, I know there's a lot of catharsis with having it be like, oh, they had a terrible life on Earth and now they get to have a happy life in this story. But I do think it is more interesting, and I definitely want to see more of with isekai stories, is where it's a mixed bag. Because that's how life often is. Do some people have just truly awful lives that are just always bad with very little good? Yes. Is it more likely that it's a mixed bag of good and bad, and there are some things that person is going to miss or wish they didn't have to leave behind? Yes. And I'd like to see more
And
of that explored.
I will say, I think anime is starting to head in that direction because I need to find out what anime it was. But I saw a clip on TikTok of this anime where this dude and his girl were actually going to end their life and they got isekai'd on purpose because, oh, well, you were about to die, you were sad, and you didn't like your life, so now you can be a better life here, and all you have to do is do a quest. And the dude is like constantly like, no, you don't understand. I didn't want to live. I don't want to live here either. and you messed it up for me. And it was a very interesting perspective for that too. So I
I
think
think
anime
I
might start
know.
hitting
I
that way.
think I know what anime you're talking about, but I don't know what it's called either. I did very much want to write a story about an isekai protagonist who absolutely in no way wanted to leave their current life. Like everything was great. They had family and loved ones they cared for, and they get isekai through accident. And in this new life, it's actually worse than it was in their old life. And they have to come to terms with that. Because I think it's wouldn't be great. It would probably fall under horror thriller, which I think would be an interesting way to do a horror isekai. But because you don't see it very often, but I think it would be an interesting way to do a horror thriller. But anyway, I just wanted to note that I really like this part with the mixed feelings about being isekai. All right. Before Zay could answer, Anoki was given a large digit. The still sizzling, crispy, sticky layer that coated the outside of it made her glad Zay was wearing gloves. It probably saved some burns, even if it looked like Zay healed pretty quickly. As Zay looked between the two foods, Motan let out a chuckle. Bite some of the crow and then try the seeftra. It'll taste best that way. He demonstrated, tearing a piece of the meat with his own teeth. Anoki nodded and followed suit. The sweet and salty texture of the meat, with the sticky and spicy, all came together into a buttery, soft bite. If it wasn't for the slight crunch of the exterior, Anoki wouldn't have believed that Zay had taken a bite at all. It was so tender, it seemed to only be staying on the bone with the strength of its scent. As the spicy started to fill her head, Zay took a bite of the tuber again. The sweetness from the meat brought the citrus-like flavor to the front, along with a small hint of a pecan flavor. Anoki quickly went between the two, taking bigger and bigger bites. It was nothing quite like eating at home. Anything at home. Zay was glad Zay wouldn't have to explain this to her vlog fans. Zay was already sucking the last of the meat from the bone before realizing it had gotten very quiet, save for the fire's roar and the light sizzling and bubbling of cooking. Anoki looked around, pulling out the bone. The same bone that had been almost the half the length of her arm, that had just been almost entirely in her mouth. Anoki awkwardly looked at the bone and then the frozen elves. Boy, that was finger looking good for sure. Zay gave an awkward laugh as Latiana slowly raised her left arm, revealing black runes that had been hidden. Enclose! A single high note rang out from her mouth as Moten shouted something, grabbing onto Anoki. At least 8 more high notes rang out suddenly, creating a wall of stars on every side. The sounds were so loud, Zay couldn't make out what he was trying to shout. Suddenly, it was silent. Her body was still standing on the ground, but it was silent. Not even her own footsteps could be heard. Zay started to reach out to find the barrier to this place when Motan pulled her back close. Don't reach out. I don't know what will happen if you do it, came the softest of whispers. It's to take away your glamour. Do I have one? No. I am a story keeper. I know what you are. The others assume you are trying something evil, trying to deceive. How young of a chick are you? Why was this world obsessed with bird imagery? Maybe it was a translation issue. Anoki carefully spoke a bit louder. I got kicked out of the sky this morning. I've been learning everything on the fly. Poor chick. He gave a gentle pack on the head. You barely know anything then. No wonder you are shapeshifting without thinking. In a moment, I want you to sing loudly, the note that resonates with your heart the most. Anoki's brows furrowed, trying to make sense of all this. What will that do? Remove all glamour, including ours. Keep your eyes closed. We can be rather frightening when they are completely gone. Why is that? I'm sure it's not that bad. It's because we were made in the god's image. A pale one, but gazing upon them shows you something the horrible and beautiful truth of creation. We are only a bit less maddening.
So I just want to pause here real quick.
Yep.
I know in the real world, so many religions like to do the made in the God's image or whatever. And I always feel like any God, spiritual being would be something we can't comprehend within this plane of existence. So just the idea that something was truly made in the God's image, it would be almost maddening to look at, even if it was a pale imitation. And the elves having a glamour to protect everyone else on the planet from going mad was something that just enticed me far too much to not do it.
That's actually really cool. I have done the Eldritch God concept, and I think it's a really cool one to do, and not done enough. So I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Motan. As Motan spoke, the stars in the enclosure started leaving the wall, vibrating and creating a hum. It felt like the rumbling from that morning. Part of Anoki wanted to curl up and scream. It felt so wrong, like something wanted to tear off her skin. Once again, Motan was shouting at someone, but the words evaporated into the vacuum of this imaginary galaxy. Taking a few breaths, Anoki thought of home, of family, of what bullshit this entire situation was. Zay didn't do anything wrong. Or anything right. Zay was just a person in a dumbass situation because of an allergy no one could have seen coming. These elves didn't even seem to know that if Zay died, the gods were going to possibly murder everyone because they were hangry. With all of that emotion settling deep in her chest, Anoki let out a note. It wasn't high, it wasn't low, but it was steady and growing louder. Zay looked long enough to see the stars changing color and starting to back up. Her hands became tight fists, and Zay kept holding the note. It felt like it had been both moments and hours. Before Zay could look to Moten to see what was happening, a hand suddenly covered her eyes. Remember what I said, chick. Close your eyes. I will tell you when to stop. Just step with me for now and keep singing. Anoki carefully turned around and started walking forward. The ground was still there. It hadn't disappeared. Soon, the warmth from the fire returned. The sounds of cooking and the smell of smoke and the spices filled the air again. Motan carefully guided her around it, putting her hands on the metal pot. As the pot disappeared, the still warm liquid pooled around her boots, the smell of wine filling the air around them. Can you make one of those an enchanted helmet? Zay shrugged and focused on doing so. Motan let go for a moment before putting it over her head. The magic is almost done. You will feel like you need to gasp for air. Take a deep breath in and then out before opening your eyes. As he spoke, the reminder of the need for air made Anoki want to start gasping. It was a struggle to hold on to the note much longer, the sound wavering. The only comfort was the elves around here sounded the same. The last one. Zay just had to be the last one. One more moment. Suddenly, Litiana could be heard shouting, "Motan, how dare you? We need to interrogate that thing." Ah! Sorry. Anoki ended the note on a near scream before taking a breath like Zay was told. Zay looked to the other elves, realizing there was a bit of glass in the helmet that was putting almost an overlay on them. Anoki gave a small gasp for air. Little gasps continued as Zay spoke. I would like some more food. And maybe less send me to space magic, please. And someone to tell me what I did wrong. Sorry about the scream. I didn't really think about it before I did it. And that is the end of chapter 5. I like that the beginning of chapter 6 is called Getting Grilled, in which we know that Anoki is about to be questioned.
I had so much fun with the titles.
We can see
All
that.
fun.
We can see that. All right, so we have read the first 5 chapters of my friend's story in the Reincarnated Shapeshifter Godly Feast first course. That is all we are going to read, but if you want to keep reading, you can check out the story on Tapas, as in the pinned message on Twitch. And in another way, Hugh.
So we still need to submit it to Amazon tomorrow. I'm doing a couple last checks just to make sure there's no formatting issues. But we will be putting the book up for sale on Amazon. I would love to say a specific date, but Amazon has to kind of approve things and such, and we want to double check the things. The hope is that we'll be able to have a hard copy and paperback version available, and hopefully everyone will be able to enjoy it.
And if people wanted to know when that happens, is there somewhere they could catch up and see and maybe hear that announcement from you directly?
I will put up the announcement in the Tapas novel. It'll be a separate announcement once we have a date. I'm currently doing a little month-long hiatus just because a lot of personal stuff and some other things made me feel like the certain chapters for the second novel were starting to suffer. I want to make sure. But that's the other thing. By the way, the second book, I'm just going to do the whole series on Tapas in the same series update because I know sometimes it's hard to remember. Oh, I got a sub to a new series. But there'll be that, and I'll most likely put it out on my socials, which is Hugh or You on Tapas, or sorry, here, sorry, my brain is trying to shut down. But I have Twitter, Facebook, and such, which most of the socials I believe I have listed in my Tapas account. If I don't, I need to fix that. But definitely it will be said in the Tapas novel, and I will make an update saying, order the book today. And it'll be everything from the first novel, for sure. And then we're going to have to work on the second one. Oh, yeah, that. Hi. Yes. Sorry, that's newer. My brain does not process. I have too many things I do. Yay. That would be. And I want to say I am making sure to include recipes in the back. And I have way too much world building in the novel. So there is going to be like in any book I do, there's going to be like notes from Inoki about whatever race was the primary focus and what Inoki learned about the cooking and the food and such for that. Because I need to get my world building out somewhere. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 recipes at the end of the first book. Yep. And I will say, while in the Tapas version, I did discuss as sort of the recipe section for one of the chapters, the how to make a mead, basically, how mead making works, especially fruit meads. I decided not to put that in the novel because after some folks read it, they said that the novel does come off as something that would be appropriate for like teens, like 16 and up. And they probably don't need to know how to make their own booze.
Yeah,
So I did go ahead and
your story does fit like a preteen. I could see this being marketed as a preteen story.
So I have gone ahead and left out those from the actual book, but it is on the Tapas because I don't think many preteens and teens are reading, except for my son, who y'all might have heard briefly earlier. He was like, somebody's reading your book on Twitch. I am not allowed to not finish the series because of my son.
Well, you should.
So y'all,
it anyway.
Well, yeah, I was going to finish it anyway, obviously, but it's going to be like 7 or 8 books.
But
It's gonna
yeah,
take a minute.
because Arthur. Oh, ads are in progress. I was
Oh
gonna
no.
say like, there's 8 races, so clearly every race needs a season.
Yep. Every race is getting its own thing.
Well, I mean, if you need any advice on how to write an 8+ season story, I've got your back.
Yay. Oh my gosh, the stuff with the centaurs though, I'm having far too much fun on. Because the centaurs, I um just yeah, I'll have to mention that when things go. Season 9 win. When the story is done, the story is done. I will say that.
Oh, Weeb,
Uh
season 9. I don't know how I want to share season 9. Weeb is talking about my
oh,
story. They're talking about my story that was on Radish, which is my second most popular story after The Fallen Rise, which was reincarnated as the Demon Emperor's heir. And it is 8 seasons. I did finish the story right before Radish announced that they were shutting down. So obviously, I'm not going to put it on Radish to make people pay for season 9 when the site is going away at the end of the year. To me, that is just 1,000% not fair.
yeah.
But this does mean I don't know where to share season 9. This story has had enough push from people to be published. It's kind of complicated for me to figure out how to separate it into separate books because obviously I can't do like all 8 seasons in one book. That book would be gigantic. It would be a paperweight, not a book. Um, but
Oh, you
obviously,
don't want to do the next War and Peace size book?
I would like, uh, especially for reincarnated as the Demon Emperor's heir, I would like for each book to have its own cover, which again means commissioning different artists, or I have to draw 4 or 5 different covers, which is, and I also kind of don't want to gatekeep season 9 behind the printed version, but I don't know if I want to move the story to Tapas because again, season romance fantasy is a very bloated category genre on Tapas. So if I
It really
put it
is.
there, I'm setting it up for failure. I'm setting it up to not get noticed. I'm setting it up to not do well on the site, which makes it kind of hard for me to want to put it there, knowing that most of the people who want to read it are not going to find it because there's just too much romance fantasy. I've been debating if there is possibly another genre I could put it in because you could argue that it is there's some horror aspects with the Eldritch God thing going on. You could argue that it is drama. Could very much argue that it is drama, but it is also romance forward. So it's still a very romance heavy story. I could also put it in straight romance, but I also feel like that's a very overcrowded category as well. So drama would probably be the best way for me to put it on Tapas and get it noticed, but I feel like I'm being semi dishonest just in order to get people to see it. So I'm very much fighting on what's going to happen with that story because I would like to put it back out there because once Radish goes down in 3 months, it's going to be gone and no one will be able to read it anymore, and that makes me very sad and upset because a lot of people paid to read the story. Somebody in these past 2 months literally just binged all 8 seasons, which makes me feel very weird about it because they just spent money on a story they won't get to keep, and it makes me feel so bad that I can't tell people not to read it. And so I very much want to make it available. It'll definitely, like all of my stories, be available as an ebook, but as far as posting it on like Tapas, I don't know. I can't make up my mind about that right now. I was going to try and make it into a comic. Oh, Koizetsu!
Hooray!
Thank you for the raid.
Woot woot!
Yay! We got a koi raid.
Koi raid, pretty little fishies.
I love koi. They are such nice fish. Thank you, thank you. What were you guys doing? What were you guys streaming? Oh, you guys were doing writing and reading as well.
Nice.
Nice, nice. I also see you've been playing some Elden Ring lately. Honestly, can't convince myself to play it. Nice. We do a lot of world building over here as well. People always ask about world building. I usually do that on Fridays. Today we were testing out a new kind of stream, which is a reading stream. Because people apparently think my voice sounds nice. So,
It is nice.
yes, Squish, thank you for contributing to the feeding my infinite hunger with your points. Yeah. You're always free. It's something new I'm trying. If you put, I think I can do it, exclamation point read, you get the link to the Google Docs. I would love to read recommended stories, but at the moment it's kind of a slippery slope. So if you're submitting a story through the doc, I ask that it's the person who wrote the story, just so that I can make sure they are cool with me reading it. I would love.
Yeah, because not everybody wants their story read.
Mm-hmm. Not everyone's okay with that, and I don't want to be like stepping on toes and be like, oh, but my viewer said that the story was so cool. But yeah, if it's your story, feel free. But that is like my stipulation. It needs to be a story written by you if you're going to submit it for me to read. But yeah, otherwise feel free. I would love to read more stories on stream. That is the whole point of trying this out. It's just reading more stories. I also have a friend's story. They need to send me the story because it's a short story I'm actually going to read from my YouTube channel. But they haven't sent it to me yet. Lime has been saying for like 2 weeks they're going to send it to me and I still don't have it.
Oops.
Oops.
Oh, well, I'm just so glad you went and read my story tonight. It was so fun hearing it read out loud.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope I did the characters justice.
I think you did. You did a great job.
Thank you. I don't always feel like I'm great, but ooh, Royal Road. I tried to put a story on Royal Road, but it makes me feel so weird.
I put Reincarnated Shapeshifter there, but I don't know if I'm going to continue doing more stuff on there. I didn't get a lot of engagement. But it's possible I wasn't like promoting correctly for it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on and letting me read your story. I know it's pretty late for you right now.
Not too late. It's almost 9, but still.
I mean, you also don't have work tomorrow because holiday.
True. Holiday.
We love holidays.
Oh, yeah.
I also don't have work tomorrow, which is why we're doing this stream. I am getting, oh my gosh, I forgot that Royal Road has, there we go. I'm sorry. I cannot do the whole light thing. Yeah, I am not great at promotion either at this point. I kind of get by on like self-promoting or other people promoting my stories. My method of promotion is I read it. And I've made some animated shorts. I actually have a new animatic coming out about one of my stories. But I need to finish it. But here we go. I'm going to go ahead and pin the new story we're going to be reading. It won't let me. You are going to let me pin, Twitch. This is not up for debate. You're going to let me pin. There we go.
Yes.
You're going to let me pin. All right. What is going on? Oh, there's other stuff going on. I'm like, what are you doing, Discord notifications? All right. Let us. Do you want to stay on while we keep reading, Hugh?
That would be lovely. I'm just going to simply for 2 seconds to check on the bread because I think it's about done. Smells done.
Awesome. In that case, we will. Koi, would you like to join the stream in order to talk about your story while we read it out loud? Looking into chat. Oh, I need to post into YouTube chat the link so YouTube can also follow along. Post it again. That should also post it. There we go. Now YouTube also has the link. We want to make sure YouTube can follow along as well. All right, that's all good. Sure. I am, in that case, going to make sure I read the blurb. And we will switch over to our reading format. So we are now going to be reading a new story. We are reading Tales of the Teal Mountain Sect by Distressed Koi, or Koizetsu, who's here in chat right now. Ooh, this is a martial arts story. Literally was talking about this on stream 2 days ago. Stop making fun of me, Streamlabs. Yeah, I have been really experimenting on Fridays. I do my writing and reading streams. I do my writing workshops. Oh, thank you for the follow, Koi. Thank you. I do my writing workshops. This past Friday, we talked about how to world build when you're not going to write the story yet. So, how to avoid falling into the world building trap where you get this new story idea and you're really excited to write it, and then now you're sunk cost fallacy into the story, and now you feel like you have to write it because you've spent so much time world building for it. So we were going over how to do light world building to get your ideas down, but not to sink so much time into it that you feel like you have to follow through. And that was what we talked about this Friday. Last Friday, we talked about character design and how to do character sheets for writing. Steps to avoid and steps that are pretty good practice. So yeah, I've been playing around with doing things like that. I mostly have been letting my followers decide what we do. And if nobody comes up with anything, then I decide what we do. Oops. So, we're going to read the blurb, which, for 3 millennia, the Teal Mountain Sect has endured. Formed during the Age of Drought as a loose alliance of like-minded sects struggling to survive in that key-starved era, it grew slowly, fueled by camaraderie and a vein of uniquely colored jade. When stability and Ki returned to the world, it emerged stronger for it. As time passed, it only continued to grow, becoming one of the greatest middle-sized sects on the southern continent. But a sect is not just a story of its origin, or the life of its founder, or even the life of a young upstart seeking to use it as a stepping stone. It's an existence, shaped by the lives of countless cultivators over millennia, each adding another page to its history, the lives they live and the way they touch others across the time. Tales of the Teal Mountain Sect is a bit of a departure from classic cultivation novels, as its goal is to explore the experiences of the different members of a sect and the legacies they leave behind. Well, you've already got me slightly interested because we were literally talking about martial arts. I was literally talking with my friend Ninja about martial arts stories and how I like reading them, but I know nothing about writing one or even where to start or anything like that, but I love martial arts stories. I love reading them. I love comics about them. So this is great. I feel like the universe was just like, so you want to know more about martial arts? And was just handed me this.
I love this because I've actually heard a bit about cultivation stories. I haven't read much yet of them, but they seem really interesting to me. So this will be a nice exposure.
The infinite threads of karma move in interesting ways. Yes, it does. Because literally was just talking about this with Ninja yesterday. And about how we know not enough. And if we needed to write a story like this, the research would be insane. I would need to do so much research. But it's great. So now we get to check out yours. So I'm going to do my best for pronunciation as always. This is my first time reading this story. So we're going to read through it together, and at the end of every chapter, have a little bit of discussion about what we liked and didn't like about the chapter. And when we reach a point that I really like, I will pause and talk about why I specifically like that part of the chapter. So, let's start with chapter 1, Prologue. Year 658 of the stable era, 14th day of the 14th month. Of all the sects that dotted the southern continent of Carano, the Teal Mountain sect had the distinction of being considered by many to be one of the best middle-sized ones around. Founded in the last quarter of the Age of Drought by their first leader, the Strongest Brain, the sect had begun its existence as a body tempering sect, with an emphasis on earth-based techniques. They were originally known as the Heavily Stone Body Sect, but that name would soon change after a shocking discovery. While it is still a subject of debate as to whether discovery of the veins of uniquely teal jade under the sect's first Dao Chang was mere fortune, or if the founder had chosen the location because of the stone's presence, the key-rich stone fueled both the sect's signature techniques and the first feud for their land. The teal jade was jadeite of a remarkably pure quality, which, as many of you know, is highly sought after by craftsmen for its superior ability in holding spells for powerful amulets and spatial rings. The fact that the mountain had only been under the Teal Mountain sect stewardship for a mere half-century prior to the jade's discovery, compounded by the resource shortages endemic of the Age of Drought, led a loose coalition of nearby sects to attempt to seize control for the stone themselves. I will comment on this because Koisetsu put it in chat. A sect, if you do not know, is the Chinese equivalent of a dojo. So feel free to correct me if I don't know what I'm talking about. But my understanding is cultivation and these types of martial arts stories have a lot to do with managing your ki and your soul energy levels and basically cultivating your ki in order to use various martial arts abilities. And these can fall into different paths, including like sword and other things, but I could not name half of those for you. But sects are basically like a place you would go to learn specific types of techniques. They can also be family based, on my understanding. It's different families, I think, is a popular way you see it done, is like different families have different techniques and stuff like that. So,
And if I remember from what I know of cultivation stories in general, they also seem to go with this idea of you're going to train your body and ki and soul and everything up to higher and higher levels to where you become like a demigod and a god and stuff like that.
yeah. Koizetsu is correcting me a bit and saying a sect is more akin to something of an ideological or religious order, ranging in size from a monastery to a small nation. See, this is why I said I barely know. I just enjoy these types of stories. Thank you for correcting me. I did not know that. Whew. Excuse me. But that does make sense. That does make sense. See, this is important clarification for understanding the story. And I left off here. So I left off here. Numbering a mere 14 students and 3 instructors at this time, the Teal Mountain sect was thoroughly outnumbered by the 7 sects standing against them. However, in an act of uncommon solidarity among cultivators at the time, they were aided in their time of need by a trio of neighboring sects they had aided in the past: the Profound Hammer sect, the Clear Pill Alchemists, and the Ancient Bones Mystics. They were also assisted by a local branch of the Lee family, who still retains close ties with the sect to this day. By taking advantage of their familiarity with the terrain, they were able to buy time for the Strongest Brain to set a grand formation, one that threw the invaders back with great force and thunder. Across several further skirmishes, the bonds of companionship grew among these unlikely allies, and by the end of their ordeal, they were sworn brothers. They unified their sects with the sworn oaths under the tree now known as the Founder's Willow, and declared their new name to the heavens above. Yes, it was at this moment that they became known as the Teal Mountain Sect. It is to be noted here that recently discovered records indicate that Senior Zhao Zhang of the Profound Hammer sect petitioned that the Profound Sect of Clear Ancient Teal Jade to be chosen as the sect's title, a motion that was struck down by the representatives of all the other sects, including his own. I like this little moment here. Because, gosh,
Oh,
that
yes.
is a long title, and everyone was very correct in saying no. I like that little bit of humor right there.
What do you think we are, an isekai?
But I do like that that was included as like a little bit of humor and history, because yes, people do often like provide these really long and like out of place names, and it's like, let's calm down. Trying to work everyone's name into it is maybe a bit too much. So I do like this little note. It adds that bit of humor and that bit of reality to this, fictional account. Yes, they can. They very much can. I have seen that some of the titles get out there. Like, it's telling you the whole plot in the title sometimes. Here. In the decades that followed, the Teal Mountain sect slowly grew and expanded through the diligence of its disciples and founders alike. Throughout the remainder of the Age of Drought, it served as a refuge for loose cultivators, small schools, and unaffiliated craftsmen seeking refuge from the constant conflicts that plagued the era. Many of these newcomers would end up officially joining the sect, bringing with them new techniques from all across the continent and, in several cases, across the Great Sea. This stew pot of different teachings and ideas led the sect to develop a strong emphasis on broad study compared to its contemporaries, and is why it still boasts one of the most diverse libraries among sects its size. The plentiful veins of their signature teal jade served two purposes in these early days, as it was both a source of strength and a valuable commodity. While initially traded as a raw material, the sect would eventually begin to sell their signature stone primarily as finished works, preferring to entice artisans and artificers alike to their sect with the temptation of being able to work with this rare material. While the novelty of such materials has declined in our present era of stability, with the with these sta- can't read with the stabilization of the heavens causing the maturation of more and more heavenly treasures, at least two of the current heads of the Enchanters Department are believed to have joined the sect during this time period. The sect's core body cultivation techniques also make use of their signature material. The teal jade body technique utilizes large blocks of teal jade to aid disciples in developing the ability to sense ki. In the later stages of cultivation, to it is clearly also used to clear meridians and refine their blood vessels. Teal nephrite, the ore's lesser known cousin, is also heavily used by the sect, as its weight and resilience make for excellent training implements. Many disciples share unfond memories of strengthening their fists against boulders of the stuff, but its effect on bone and muscle strengthening is undeniable. During the founding of the Zan Empire, the sect took a neutral stance, choosing to distance themselves from the conflict. While the topic of joining either side of the conflict was hotly contested by many members, the elders of the sect held firm in their belief that the sect existed to resist conflict rather than to seek it out. Following the Empire's formation, the Teal Mountain sect would remain an independent entity until little over a century ago, when their 40-year negotiations with the Empire over retained autonomy reached an amicable conclusion. Presently, the Teal Mountain sect is made up of 7 great mountains, 3 lesser mountains, a minor range of large hills, the 12 Li River, 100 li of farmland, half of Peach Valley, and a bit of beach. Now, does anyone have any questions? The guide looked expectantly around the group of applicants, many of whom had begun to gaze around distractedly after the middle of his routine. Clapping his hands sharply, he imbued the action with just a bit of the sex palm technique to give the sound the piercing ring of struck jade, snapping the lollygaggers to attention. He coughed. Now, if all of you'll form a line, this junior will be guiding the way to our position at the practice field. From there, we'll begin distributing your test uniforms and registering personal belongings before the opening ceremony. Now, follow me. As the applicants began to form up behind him and the inevitable squabbling over order began, young Lin stared out into the sky and sighed. The sounds of progressively louder name dropping aside, it was mostly a peaceful day in the sect. He just hoped it wouldn't take too long to stop the brawl this year. He didn't want to miss out on the opening ceremony bows a third year in a row. I like that little bit of subversion towards the end. I did not know I was reading someone's presentation.
I had to admit I was wondering what it was when I saw the quotation marks as we went through. Um, but I kind of just like the overall thing. Also, I don't know if this is intentional, but and this is just my brain trying to find patterns. I'm noticing the repeated use of the number 14. There was the number 7 with 4 and 3, which 4 and 3 makes 7. 7 times 2 is 14. And I find it interesting. It's like then you have the 4 groups becoming 1. I don't know. There's an interesting play with numbers there. I don't know if that was a conscious choice or not, but it seems interesting to me.
Also, for clarification, a li is a measure that is approximately a third of a mile long. I did know that one off the top of my head. Like I said, I like reading these types of comics and stories, so I did know the li one. But for those who did not know, a li is about a third of a mile long. So when it
Oh,
says, 1,000 li of farmland, you can do the math, but I wouldn't suggest it.
and actually, while I'm thinking about it, the 3 clans joining the 1 clan would make 4. 4 in Chinese is usually associated with like death because the 2 words sound similar, is my understanding. I could be getting that wrong.
That
So it's
is
almost kind of interesting that you have 4
that is the
and the
case
4
in
effectively die.
Japanese. I actually don't
Is
know
it
if that's the
Japanese
case.
or
I don't know if that's the case in Chinese, but that is the case in Japanese.
I want to say it's Chinese because I remember watching an American sitcom with about Chinese American families, but then stuff could be wrong on that. So,
Koi is
but
saying
I
that 4 is indeed an unlucky number in Chinese as well. I know in Japanese 4 is skipped over very often because if you pronounce it wrong, oh, it's a shared lingual quirk. Okay, because I know if you pronounce 4 incorrectly in Japanese, it can sound like death. So there are actually 2 different ways to pronounce the number 4, and it's one of the few Japanese words like that. And it is often avoided because if pronounced incorrectly, it sounds like the word death. I didn't know that was a shared lingual quirk between the 2 languages. That is very interesting.
but I do find it kind of interesting. And again, I don't know if this is intentional, but the 4 sects came together, died off, and they effectively died and became 1, almost reincarnating in a way. I don't know. I look way too deep into things sometimes,
It's all good.
but that's where my brain went. Author intent, I have no clue.
I mean, you were looking for the number patterns. Ads are
My
about to
brain.
start in 50 seconds, however, so we are going to take a quick ad break. This is a good time for hydration, stretching, snack time if you need a snack. I do need to stretch really quick because my shoulder is starting to get mad.
I'm having a snack.
So we
My
are
own
going to
story
run
made me
ads.
hungry.
If you were hungry from our first story, this is a great time to get a snack. We're going to take a quick ad break and then we're going to come back with chapter 2. So let me put up our BRB and we will be right back with chapter 2.
You have time. You can make it. Yay.
With
They're showing a Rubik's Cube right now. The
60.
one that lights up and you have to solve it by lights as the lights turn on and off.
Oh, that's interesting. I grabbed some cupcakes out of the fridge because I want to eat them when they come to room temp.
Yay.
Yeah, that is how it happens sometimes. It's interesting how. Welcome back, everyone, since the ad break is over. It is interesting how, like, sometimes numbers. Like, you'll put numbers in on purpose, and then sometimes you don't even notice, but you're making number patterns that you didn't intend, which I think can be very interesting. But we are done with ads, so we are back. So we are going to pick right up where we left off with Chapter 2, which is in year 658 of the stable era, 14th day of the 4th month. Chow Ren took a step towards the back to solidify that he wasn't going to get involved in the hierarchy fight for the line supremacy, and then several more to join up with the half of the group that seemed content to speculate. As he had so many times in the past, he thanked his lineage from sparing him from this conflict. As a middle son of a middle branch of a middle family, nobody was relying on him to maintain the family's reputation. In a way, it was a very freeing existence, unlike the one possessed by the fellow in the yellow robe, who was currently trying to push a blue-haired rival out of the line. It took Ren a few seconds to place the crane's crest. Yes, he must be from the... Who are you to place yourself before the Zhao family? The lad soon declared himself as Zhao Lan, snapped as he attempted another shove. Ah, that was it. The Zhao family. They had been making waves lately with their newly developed fire talismans, which had propelled them from countryside nobodies to a name known up and down the coastal cities. Their strength was still dubious, though, as some of their success was owed to the direct actions of their current patriarch, and they were desperate to produce an heir capable of proving that his talent wasn't generational. They could have done a better job preparing this one, though, as Ren had finally recognized the young man that he was currently attempting to push around. One always had to be aware of bigger fish, after all, though Ren would sooner slit his own wrists than call him one aloud. You presume too much, the Bailong heir said as he snapped the approaching wrist aside. It would seem that even a frog trapped in a well would know more of the sky than you. Who are you to claim that you deserve to stand before me? Zhao Lan spat, one drop coming suicidally close to making contact. Do you really think your family possesses the prestige to be placed before my Zhao family? If your family was twice as renowned as it is, you might have the chance to be invited to to the least of my family's banquets, the young dragon snorted, knocking Lan aside with a contemptuous flick. But I suppose that's to be expected from a bumpkin such as yourself, so quick to mistake money for class. Despite being at the same early stage of key gathering stage as the rest of the applicants, Lan was barely able to resist the force, stumbling backwards a good 4 feet before he was able to catch his balance. The physique of a dragon wasn't to be underestimated, Ren thought to himself, even if they didn't truly begin growing into their power until well past the key refining stage. Ren reckoned Bai Long Shin was cultivating a body technique, likely a potent family technique, and that he was currently somewhere in the middle of the body tempering stage. Zhao Lan, on the other hand, seemed to have been under the misassumption that his peers had all been solely focused on cultivating their ki to reach this stage in the tests. It might have been one born of arrogance, but Ren supposed that given his family's focus on a more scholarly aspect of cultivation, it might have just been the product of his environment. After all, what benefits did a stronger body offer a talisman master, especially ones that made their fortune selling their craft? The ability to better lift all of those heavy pieces of paper? More ki, on the other hand, meant more production, more powerful wares, and the ability to more directly explore the arcane mysteries that infused with the paper they inked. It was likely that Lan was also cultivating his mental strength, the often underestimated third pillar of cultivation, but at this point there was little it could do to help him. Ah, Shin, I see you have somewhat managed to grow more imperiously imputus since we last met. Another youth in a red robe said, unsleeving a fan. But then again, it's about what one should expect from a snake with delusions of grandeur. He opened it with a snap, red chrysanthemums and peonies undulating as he gently fanned himself. Lee Han, he breathed, eyes narrowing. I'd assumed that you had kept quiet because you remembered the way our last encounter ended. Only a fool would expect such a dubious fluke shake my resolve, Lee Han laughed back. My Tao heart remains firm. So, quite unlike your leg, then? I could say the same about your wrist. If that's the best you can do, I can see why you think you could have won. Only a loach like you would cling to a single victory alike, and only a stray cat would claim that refusing to change its stripes makes it more like a tiger, Shin interrupted. And yet here you are. Lee Han snapped his fan shut at the remark, his face moving a shade closer to the flowers that decorated it. You dare! Oh, I do dare, Shin replied, azure silk flowing as his stance slowly shifted, his right palm raising in front of him as in a taunt that seemed ready to change into a fighting stance. So, do you want to continue sparring with words, or perhaps you'd like to give your fists a chance to lose? Lee Han growled at this, ears flattening as he tossed away his fan and lunged at Bai Long Shin. The latter laughed, catching his hands as the two began trying to outmuscle each other. Things only devolved from there, as Zhao Lan tackled Shin from the back, and the three tumbled into a group of arguing applicants, all who immediately took great offense with the interruption. And that, Ren thought to himself, as the rest of the applicants began to egg on the combatants, was why having no expectations was so great. Oh my gosh, I loved that entire section. I loved that entire section. Just
It's
the back
so
and forth and just like the inevitability of, oh, they're about to throw hands. And then Rin just being like, man, I love not being important.
and I love how it really shows how everyone perceives the various social standings as well as the expectations for cultivation. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, it makes it very clear. Like, even I would say this is a very good, like, I know we're only on like chapter 2, but even just from what we've read, I would recommend this to somebody who's like, I'm interested in a cultivation story, but I don't understand all the terms. Because without actually defining anything, this made it very clear what the difference between just simply body cultivation and key cultivation is. And just the rivalry between two students without needing paragraphs to explain it. And I think that is great because a lot of people get dissuaded when it requires having like innate knowledge to jump into these type of stories, or you need to read like paragraphs to understand what's going on. That did a really good job of the difference between body cultivation, key cultivation, and even hinted at mental cultivation without overwhelming us with all what all of them are yet. And I really like that. But also the humor and that whole argument was great. Great character work, 1000%. Aside from avoiding scandal and diplomatic incident, the only thing he needed to do was diligently cultivate to the best of his ability. After all, he was just one of many members of his clan training with the sect. His family was always in need of more cultivators, so there would always be a role waiting for him once he reached the key refining stage. And should he reach even further beyond, past the golden core stage, well, those thoughts of influence and status could wait for once he broke through. Then, he'd have a few centuries to think it over. At the time, he was content to take his time and enjoy the fact that he had little to lose and everything to gain. That, and maybe the sight of Bai Long Shen and Li Han trying to grab at each other in midair. The cultivator guiding them seemed to have tired of their struggle and had trapped the squabbling lot in translucent jade bubbles. Rin hadn't seen the man deploy any sort of artifact, so unless his sleeves were concealing it, that placed him solidly in the golden core stage. That was quite a bit higher than he had been expecting from the guide, though given that half the group seemed to be some flavor of noble, it was probably in the sect's best interest to do so. A key refining disciple might have have had the strength to subdue a pair of combatants, but would have been unable to neutralize this many without someone getting hurt. And given how temperamental clans tended to get when their kids were involved, well, Rin wouldn't have wanted to be the poor messenger that would have had to bear that news. Children, I would like to remind you that this isn't your yard, young Lin said calmly, barely needing to raise his voice over the silent yell of the bubbled boys. The Teal Mountain sect takes its application tests quite seriously, and while it is not so rigid as to punish a single act of youthful enthusiasm, it would do you well to not confuse leniency with passivity. Should you fail to heed this warning, with a short clap of his hands, he cracked the jade bubbles open, sending their contents spilling onto the ground like flailing yolks. You won't like the consequences. He ended the threat blandly, turning to start leading the way again. Now, we don't want to be late to register, so we'll have to walk briskly. Try to keep the person in front of you in sight and avoid walking more than 2 wide. We don't want to crowd the paths. The last part came off as a bit odd to Rin, as the garden path they were currently standing on was wider than some of the rooms he had been in. Though, he reasoned, as he formed up towards the back of the line, they probably weren't all going to be this wide. The rest of the recent rivals reluctantly spaced themselves out, doing their best to avoid getting too close to each other. As the group set off at a pace that was definitely closer to a jog than a walk, Li Han went sprinting back to retrieve his fan. Oh my gosh. Of course he lost the fan in the struggle. I can tell. I absolutely love it. The flailing yolks.
Not to have your
was great.
fan.
The flailing yolks was great. Cuz I can visualize like him clapping his hand and like the boys just spilling out. Like literally just like flopping on the ground. I think flopping fish also could have worked very well there.
I just want to say this feels like middle school to me. I don't know if they're supposed to be middle school, but I teach middle school, and this feels like maybe 8th grade graders, maybe 9, maybe lower end of high school. They're probably supposed to be a touch older, but it captures the feel of teenagers very well,
Yeah, I would say
especially
that's
self-important ones.
pretty fitting for how I think generally in most cultivation stories, if a person is just entering cultivation, they're usually about teenager age, sometimes younger. If they're like considered a prodigy, they can like start cultivating younger, but usually about teenagers is about right. So what I'm imagining most of these characters we're introduced to right now aren't that old. That's
Not they're in
actually
their
very
third
close to the
year.
age. Yep. Hoy says that's actually very close to the age. A trend in cultivation stories is that you start around 14 to 18, so you get to feel of the range quite well. So yeah, you're right. They are about that middle school teenager, self-important, hoity-toity. I'm the biggest
Then
fish
I
in
would
the
like
room.
to then I would like to say you caught the vibe of young teens very well in the story. I think that's something that's hard for a lot of people to catch, especially as they get older, because they forget what it was actually like to be a teenager. You kind of see everything through the beautiful cleaning lenses of age and nostalgia, but this catches it absolutely perfectly.
And I think that's what makes it so much fun, because it's just like you can see the teenage rivalry, oh, my house has money, so how dare you think you're more important than me? Meanwhile, just the back and forth of throwing the shade. Like, it's great. Also, him running
Just
back to get his
replace
fan.
just replace running back to get his fans with running back to get his Jordans.
He lost his shoes in the fight.
No. You gotta. Okay, I'm gonna have to explain this real quick.
I'll
In
explain.
at least in my school, because you have to remember, over 60 to 70% of my school is like rich kids, like live in $1 million homes, rich kids. No, I don't teach at a private school. It's just the neighborhood I'm zoned to, or my school's zoned to. And these kids will bring 3 pairs of shoes, a set of slides, a set of regular shoes for when they have to do stuff, and then they bring Jordans that they will put on once they get to class so people can see them in the shoes, but then take them off because they don't want them creased.
Wow.
So there have been times somebody left their stinking Jordans in my room because they took them off, put the slides back on, or put the regular shoes back on, and they were going to carry them, and then they forgot, and then they get mad that I don't know where their Jordans are, and I'm like, why are you flipping between 3 pairs of shoes?
Wow. The level of like just wow. Okay. Well, I didn't know that about the school you taught at, but yes, I agree
Yeah,
with you very much. You did a great job of capturing that very much teen, like middle school, high school energy, and especially the rivalry that seems very prevalent in these types of stories, where it's just like there's always family rivalry. You've got, oh, these families have been close for generations. You've got, this family's the new up and comer, so nobody respects them quite yet. You've got the, we've always been on opposites in the spectrums. Our families have been rivals for generations. I love seeing it. And again, this was all told so organically. There was no, hey, this family doesn't like this family. It was all very organically told through Ren's point of view,
yes,
and you got the feel through the way the characters interacted. Once again, fantastic character work. I cannot say that enough.
amazing.
This is such good character work. And the fact that this is supposed to be like several different stories, like I'm already ready to see where this protagonist goes, and so excited to see what the next protagonist story is. Like, and we're on chapter 3. And it is usually very hard for me to get into a story this fast. But you've got, like, the character work is just phenomenal. I really enjoy the story, and I will keep reading it off stream. That is a 100% for me. But okay, enough praise, enough gushing. On to
We
chapter
can't have to
3.
stop at some point.
On to chapter 3. So we are still in year 658 of the stable era, 14th day of the 4th month. Take the praise, Koisetsu. I will go for a little bit longer, just a little bit. I read a lot of stories, obviously, because I like reading. I also read a lot of stories for like research reasons, and especially since I write for Tapas, I like to read what the popular stories are. And good character work is hard to find. A lot of people can write good stories, and there is nothing wrong with that. A good story is a good story, but it is hard to find good characters. And people don't understand that sometimes there's a difference between writing a good story and writing a good character. But this is phenomenal character work, and it just elevates the story for me. And so take the praise. I love to see it. Maybe I'll do a writing stream about the difference between a good story and a good character. Okay, but now I will get to reading. The garden of the Teal Mountain sect was rather nice, even if it was being taken in such a fleeting fashion. Smooth stone pavers wound wide paths around trees and ponds, separating the plethora of species brought in by the sect by its many members over the centuries. They were a tapestry of tales, each having been added for a reason that mattered to its respective tender. Some, like the grove of ironwoods being hit by enthusiastic disciples, were cultivation aids. The tree's strong bark, already akin to its namesake metal, would only grow tougher over the years in the face of such constant tempering, resulting in a training companion that would keep up with the immense lifespan of a cultivator. The largest of the trees loomed over the rest of the grove, its 30-foot diameter mere inches away from pushing the path aside, its scarred bark a testament to the millennia of endurance. Others were far more exotic, with far more unclear purposes. Metal trees of winding copper and ruby berries that slowly moved their burnished leaves to better catch the sun. Immense lotuses wider than a man, with a rainbow of winding veins emerging from their ivory blooms. A pair of floating bird's nests, held up by a tree that was only visible in the reflection of a nearby pond. There was even a patch of black sand, where a set of paired pear trees made of living flame bore fruit of perfectly clear water, golden seeds glistening within. As Chow Rin watched a disciple in heavily padded clothes use a glowing spear to prune one of the trees, the fruit and branch somehow holding their form even though they were separated. He couldn't even imagine what it would be used for. Was it a pill ingredient? Or was it some sort of condensed source of water key? Or, after watching the disciple take a hearty bite out of it, what would it even taste like? And then there were those that, like the founder's willow, that were purely aesthetic. Many cultivators maintained hobbies on the long road of immortality, and gardening, with its long growth periods, was almost perfectly made for beings that could blink months away. Some of the maintained gardens were immaculately maintained things, perfectly identical flowers spaced at exacting intervals, each with the precise shade needed to best complement its companions. Trees, slowly shaped over the decades to form aesthetically pleasing patterns, their shadows catching pleasing images over groves of perfectly identical grass. That's okay, it happens to the best of us. Sometimes reading aloud makes spots out those typos. For what it's fair, I have no idea what typo you're talking about, so I completely glossed over it. Vryn also spotted a few sections that looked quite overgrown, with grass almost as tall as he was, and smatterings of plants in various stages of fighting for survival. He wondered what led them to being in that state. Were they flights of fancy, perhaps? The whim of a cultivator who decided to try his hand at something for a few years before just giving up? Or were their owners simply preoccupied with closed door cultivation and would one day return to set things right again? Then again, maybe some were just that way their owners liked them, he thought, as he saw one of the rougher looking sections being enthusiastically watered by a burly disciple. The man's green robe was marked with the white cuffed sleeves of an inner disciple, which explained why the disciple was carefully pruning solar oranges in a neighboring section, were limiting themselves to just shooting him glares rather than rushing over to forcibly trim back the ramshackle roughage. Even with their quick pace, which picked up midway through, it still took the applicants a good half an hour to exit the garden. As they wove their way through the sect, Ren swore to himself that he was going to be more diligent in cultivating his body, and his movement techniques, and his ki. Oh, ancestors, why were there so many stairs in this sect? Good stopping point. I love the guy who's just watering overgrown grass. Love it. Absolutely love it. Again,
Maybe he believes in cultivation through the natural way of things rather than just
perfectly tending it. Yes.
Yeah.
But again, I love it. Again, that is great character work. This is what? One paragraph about a character who's not even named. And yet he feels so relatable. It's one paragraph. What? 4 sentences? If that? It's 3 sentences. And yet he feels, I can imagine him in my brain. I can see him with his green and white robe flinging water happily among his random overgrown grass, probably some weeds in there that he thinks are really nice looking flowers, and all of the other disciples around him in a much nicer section just shooting him glares, but they can't do anything because he's higher ranked than them. Absolutely love the visual. And it tells me so much about a character, and he doesn't even get a name. Doesn't even get a name. I love it. It's such great character work. I could gush about the character work. I love it so much. At the head of the group, young Lin kept his usual pace. Behind him, the applicant struggled along with him and varied his stage of exhaustion. He didn't need to look back to know this, as with his level of cultivation, such a simple observance was well within his abilities. Excuse me. As a cultivator in the golden core stage of ki cultivation, it would be the simplest thing for him to simply reach out and feel them with his ki sense. Inexperienced as they were, the applicants would be unable to feel the ephemeral touch of his ki against theirs. Such an overt probing would typically be seen as bad manners among peers, but with such a vast difference in skill, it was unlikely to ever be discovered. As a cultivator in the body molding stage of body cultivation, he could also use his enhanced senses to keep track of their position. He simply needed to increase the potency of his senses, hearing, smell, instincts. Focusing even the slightest bit would allow him to sense every labored step and obvious breath of his charges. The sect's sprawling design did much to encourage its members to achieve a certain level of physicality, and he found that showing new members that reality as early as possible was best. And lastly, as a cultivator of the mind coalescing stage of mental cultivation, he could always just keep track of them by feeling the presence of their consciousness around him. With his mind's eye, he could see the wisps of the soul, the exudances that life produced from its myriad feelings, All but two of the youth were open books, their inner emotions on full display, even if he could see most of them just as plainly with his normal eyes. Young Lin's prowess in cultivating the three pillars of cultivation was a source of pride for him, as it was rare for a cultivator to reach the third stage of each, much less before their first millennia. While most focused on cultivating their strengths, he remained a pure generalist. After all, a strong foundation was built on even ground. Thanks to this mentality, he had been able to overcome several of the stumbling blocks that had plagued his peers, a direct result of the wider understanding of cultivation his chosen path granted him. Said understanding was also what had allowed him to develop the technique he was using to observe the applicants, the eyes on the back of his head technique. I bet Hugh wishes they had that. While a body reshaping cultivator would simply grow a second set of eyes on the back of their skull, Lin had been able to produce a similar effect a stage early by experimenting with combinations of mental and key sensing techniques for a few decades. He'd originally developed it to get back at some friends that had enjoyed sneaking up on him a little too much, but he'd quickly realized that there were far more practical applications to being able to expand his field of vision in any direction. While it would take at least another few decades to refine it into the quality where it could be considered a true teachable technique, it served as an affirmation that his cultivation was on the right path. So, it was good to see that some of the applicants had already begun to expand their horizons in similar ways. The Bai Long boy he had expected. The family had always set high expectations for their members, even ones that were applying to sex far below their status. The other, he hadn't. He'd have gone through the application list again to confirm their identity, as he'd just skimmed the pages marked important, but if they had made it through the tests, they would definitely be someone worth watching. Stopping in front of the nephrite pedestal of the statue of Li Taizhen carving his first floating mountain, young Lin stopped to check his timepiece as he waited for the applicants to catch up to him. They were such handy little things, these new clockwork devices. It had only been a century or four since their invention, and they'd already gone
Or
from being the
four.
size of a large man to the size of a said large man's hand. Yeah, the century or four.
I would like to repeat numbers 1 and 4 showing up.
This is very true. But also just the casualty of, it had only been a century or four. The nonchalance of somebody who's lived for way too long. I love it. All of the alchemists swore by them, and he could see the appeal. They kept far more accurate time than the old water clocks and incense sticks. Most importantly, they synchronized with each other incredibly easily, which is how he knew that even if it took the husky young heir of the Min family another 3 minutes to reach them, they'd still be able to enter the hall 5 minutes ahead of schedule. He was proud of the boy. They usually had 1 or 2 applicants get lost and drop out each year, but he'd managed to keep up. Well then, he announced, projecting his voice so that the straggler could clearly hear him, we've arrived at our destination. Behind me is a statue of our illustrious founder, Li Taizhen, the strongest brain. It is a common practice for disciples to rub his feet for good luck before exams and missions. To your right is the storage pagoda number 5 and the General Assembly Hall, where we'll be holding the opening ceremony, and to your left is the Sky Dock. Should you fail the application exam, the boat is to take you back to Red River City is docked in berth 4. Young Lin paused to put his timepiece back into his storage ring, before remembering he had one last thing he was supposed to say. There is also a skiff to take you to the sect's entrance every other hour if you are accompanied to the sect. Now that you are all here, let us proceed. Without another word, he turned and began walking toward their destination, this time at a pace slow enough that the applicants were easily able to keep up. As he passed the statue, he watched out of the back of his head as many of them reached out to rub the statues, some far more vigorously than others. He chuckled to himself. No matter the age, kids never changed. Not that luck would help them this much with this year's test. Well, now I'm concerned for all these kids. They don't know. Whew. I really am loving this story so far.
It's really good.
It is. This is really good. Okay, I'm not going to read the date unless the date changes. So
That's fair.
this is the same day. Against Chao Ren's expectations, their taskmaster of a guide led them to the storage pagoda rather than the assembly building. It was a good deal smaller than most of the pagodas he'd seen, standing a mere 6 tiers tall rather than the dozen-story monoliths that the other sects boasted. It's okay, it doesn't change for the first 5 chapters. Its curved roofs were tiled with unadorned shingles, a rough red that blended into its tan walls. A nondescript wooden sign with the character 5 hung over the entrance, which didn't even seem to have a door. The most remarkable thing about it was the lack of the dark teal stone that had seemed ubiquitous within the sect's architecture. In contrast, the assembly hall next door was covered with the stuff. From the tall pillars flanking its entryway to the elaborately carved reliefs on its wall, it seemed designed to show off as much of the sect's mineral wealth as possible. Its walls were a pale white marble, shot with thin veins of blue crystal, and the sign that announced its purpose was about as tall as Chao Ren was and covered in gold. A small group of disciples were milling about in front of the building, but his group was through the entrance of the pagoda before he could get a good look at what they were doing. Inside, they were greeted by an instructor, flanked on either side by a pair of disciples. His robe, dyed the sect's signature shade of bright jade teal, was trimmed with white to mark him as a senior instructor and embroidered with thinly lined mountains. The disciples' robes, on the other hand, were a dull nephrite green and bereft of any sort of embroidery, though the one on the left had a small jade ring hanging from a tassel on his belt. Young Lin gave the man a respectful bow. "Greetings, senior instructor." "Greetings, junior, and welcome applicants," the instructor announced, a smile creasing the faint wrinkles on his face all the way to his salt and pepper sideburns. He was well built, in the way that many body cultivators were, with wide shoulders, calloused hands, and muscles that ridged his robes when he moved his arms. His facial hair was trimmed into a neat goatee, and when he turned to take an object from the disciple behind him, Ren saw that he wore his hair back in a small bun. "I am Senior Instructor Lan Han. You may refer to me as Senior Instructor or Senior Instructor Lan. Before you proceed to the assembly and the exam, you will be leaving all personal belongings in the storage pagoda to prevent any cheating or outside interferences. This is a standard testing measure and one that we enforce with every exam." The line was accompanied by a sharp look, which silenced any objections in their cribs. Ooh, ads are about to start in 40 seconds, so I cannot snooze ads, unfortunately. I have been snoozing them throughout the reading because I want to just keep reading. But we will pause here so that I can pick up with what the senior instructor is saying. I actually need to refill my water bottle, so I will do that during ads. And then we will come back and continue reading as all of the students have to give up their possessions. Ad break.
Ad break.
Ad break. Oh gosh, I really like this story. I'm not even like,
It's a really good story.
it is. I was so
It's
mad.
making me insecure about my writing.
No, your writing is great. We all have different tones. I was starting to feel bad. I was praising the character writing. I'm like, I didn't praise Hugh's character writing.
It's okay.
But I'm sorry. It's just there's something very unique about being able to take a character that doesn't have a name and you can instantly connect to them. It's something I am not that great at and am getting better at. But
It's really cool when you can make it happen.
It is so cool and such good writing. Especially if you're writing a very character-driven story, which clearly this is. Considering it has several different main characters. Hugh, that bread is unfair.
Came out looking good, didn't it?
It looks so good. I want a piece.
It's from my dad. You don't get a piece of that one. You can have some of the one I make tomorrow.
I can't have some of that either. I don't live in Texas. Are you
I
gonna
mean,
send me a piece?
Just come here. I mean, I've mailed cookies.
I was gonna say, are you gonna mail me bread?
I could.
Am I gonna get bread mail?
Bread mail.
I was about to do Blue's Clues.
Mail.
Mail. I hate hate that just because I have my game dev like email address, I am always getting like, "Hey, we'll help you market your game." I'm like, "Hey, if I wanted help marketing, I'd reach out to you first." I hate when people reach out to me first
I
about
I just
marketing.
had to tell a bunch of people to not panic about any news they hear about my area.
Why?
Um, okay, remember the thunderstorms I was worried about earlier?
Mm-hmm.
But then it didn't rain that long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, um, there was flooding south of me apparently.
Okay, so you're fine.
I'm fine. Okay, my neighborhood doesn't flood. Period. End of statement. When a major, literal once in a thousand year flooding happened in my area, we didn't.
Hugh said
My neighborhood
Hugh
didn't
said
flood.
they're fine, Weeb. Hugh said they're fine.
I'm fine. Weeb.
The flooding is
I'm
not them.
fine.
The flooding is not them.
Yeah.
All right, but we
It.
are back from ads. So welcome back, everyone. We were talking about apparently there was flooding in Texas today, near where Hugh lives, but Hugh themselves is fine.
He was good.
Hugh is safe, but apparently there was some flooding in Texas. So hopefully, everyone who experienced the flooding is safe. It's always bad
Oh,
when flooding happens.
we have very strong training. Um, from one of the hurricanes that happened of turn around, don't drown, and don't leave until the authorities tell you, because though they found out that those two things were the things that caused the most deaths and flooding in our area.
Yeah.
And thanks to that, we usually only have a small handful of people now
See,
when
I'm
a
from
flood happens.
Florida. Grew up in Florida, so when I moved to West Virginia and lived in a valley between mountains that obviously very heavily flooded most of the time, I probably knew what to do better than most of the people around me who weren't used to those high levels of flooding. Because again, I've lived through so many hurricanes, I barely flinch. I don't even get worried until they say it's a Cat 3.
Yeah, in this case, it was flash flooding was the problem.
Yeah, wasn't there flash flooding in
So
Texas like a couple weeks? Like earlier in the month of August that wiped out a whole campsite?
that was in a different section of Texas. Like saying wasn't there flooding in Texas or a few weeks ago is like saying wasn't there flooding on the East Coast a few weeks ago.
So it's
I mean,
constantly flooding
honestly,
in Texas. I just remember it made news because it wiped out like a
yeah.
campsite and a lot of kids died and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, there was a whole lot of mess with that, but yeah, that was like 3-4 hours away from me.
Okay, I know Texas is a huge state,
Yeah.
just like Florida is. People just don't.
It,
Florida is a weird shape, so people don't realize it's as big as it is.
yeah, it's one of those things. And then not only that, but Florida, I think, is the second most populated state.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I'm always surprised by that with as big as Texas is.
Yeah. I think California also is another state. People don't realize how big it is because of its shape.
Yeah, you don't think about it, and then you actually look at the map and go, "Oh yeah, it's almost the entirety of the West Coast."
Yeah. And then now I live in Washington State. But all right. Right here. The senior instructor, welcome back from ads, where we just left off and are about to pick up. The senior instructor was telling all the kids, you can't take your stuff because you're not cheating on this exam. Yeah, New York is actually, I've driven through New York like twice now. I used to drive from Florida to Boston all the time for holidays because I was dating someone who lived in Boston. And so we would drive. And yeah, New York is big. Having driven through like catty corner through the state too many times. I also refuse to drive through New York State. I refuse to drive through Maryland. I will, when it comes to driving on the East Coast, I will drive from Florida to right before Maryland, and then I refuse to drive past that. I'm sorry, I'm not driving through Maryland. There is a bridge that you either have to go through a bridge or you have to take a 2-hour long detour around the city, and I refuse to drive over that bridge. It is an underground bridge, and I hate it.
People in that state are crabby anyway. Speaking as someone who had to live there for a while, it's not a terrible place to visit, but they're cranky.
They're cranky. I mean, some people could say that about certain cities in Florida. They're just cranky places. If you
Yeah,
can,
but
yeah,
not
if you can
the
drive in New
entire
York
state.
City, you can drive anywhere. I just refuse. I refuse. I will drive through the southern states all day. And I will drive on the back
The
roads of South Carolina where you haven't seen a gas station for 3 hours. And you're worried that if you have to pull off into a back road that somebody might just pull up behind you and you might not make it back to the highway faster than I'll drive in New York City. I'm not joking, by the way. I needed to get gas in South Carolina once, and the nearest gas station was 2 miles from the highway. So we got off on the exit, and you are literally driving down like you're gonna get murdered down this road levels of dark and nothing. And like you drive by one car that's just parked on the side of the road, and you're praying its lights doesn't come on and they don't start following you because you're not from this area. You've got Florida license plates and you're just praying. Done that way too many times, and I still prefer that to New York City. But anyway, so we're right here. Behind me, you'll find the changing stalls. The senior instructor gestured at a series of temporary cloth stalls set up in the lobby behind him, and each in which you will each find a wooden box. Inside each box is a uniform, which he tossed out of the box he had taken from his disciple. The clothes fell into a shape next to him, as if an invisible person had somehow stepped into them mid-air. It tied its belt, straightened its sleeves, and stood at attention next to the man. You will also find one enchanted wooden lock and one seal marker. He produced a square wooden padlock covered in delicate characters and a similarly decorated wooden slip on a cord necklace. Once you have changed into your uniform, you will place your other clothing, jewelry, sentimental items, and other possessions into the box and lock it with this lock. Do not close the lock while the seal marker is inside the box. The locks were only made to be unlocked by their corresponding marker, and their creator does not appreciate having to come down from his mountain to deal with your foolishness should you lock yours inside. We do not have any spare boxes should you lock only some of your possessions in the box with your marker, so any other belongings you own will go into the general basket to be claimed at the end of the exam. At this, he gestured to a basket at the back corner of the room, which already seemed to have a few robes and a bracelet in it. All belongings must be placed in your box before you leave. Any items you attempt to retain will be confiscated. Your box will be returned to you at the end of the exam. Do not lose your seal marker. Aside from being the only thing that can open your box, it is also your proof of ownership. You will notice that one corner has an edge to it. This is to draw the blood needed to bind you to the seal. Simply cut the edge of your finger like so, drip a drop of blood into the center symbol, and it will be bound to you and only you. He demonstrated the action with the seal in his hands, though rather than place his blood on the seal, he held up his thumb to the applicant as the emerald drop that emerged drew itself back into his flesh before closing the wound behind it. The edge is enchanted to only open wounds for a short time, so you do not need to worry about bandaging your cuts. Your markers are not, however, enchanted to remain in your possession. So, I repeat, do not lose them. Once you have secured your box, you will give it to one of my assistants who will place it into one of the storage pagoda's vaults until the end of the exam period. We have been informed of any seals, medicine, or cultivation of simple supplements ahead of time, so if you have one or more of them, we will need to verify their authenticity with you before you proceed to the exam. Are there any questions? There was a silence as Lan Han finished his speech, before the boy to the right of Chow Rin awkwardly raised his hand. Instructor Lan Han, he began before swiftly being corrected. Senior Instructor Lan Han. Apologies, Senior Instructor Lan Han. My ring is of extreme sentimental importance to me and my clan. It's something my mother gave to me on her deathbed, and she made me swear that I would take it off, save to pass it to my own child. I can't. There are no exceptions to this rule. The senior instructor cut in again. If you wish to keep your ring on, you may do so at the dock. Are there any other questions? But it's part of our bloodline inheritance and If you want to cultivate your family's style, do it with your family. If you want to learn the ways of the Teal Mountain sect, you must follow them. And one of our ways is to follow the rules. If you're worried that someone will steal your family secrets, don't. The boxes are quite secure, and you hardly have the most interesting family here. His eyes flicked subtly over to Bai Longshin, who, to his credit, seemed to remain nonplussed by the attention. If you still insist on keeping your ring, you may leave. But Senior Instructor Lan gestured towards the exit. The youth twisted at his ring, clearly caught between the weights of opposing responsibilities. Finally, after 4 long moments, he clenched his fist and without another word, stormed out of the pagoda. Chao Ren heard him cursing faintly under his breath as he stomped from his piers to the piers as a faint breeze blew out of the entrance. Abruptly, there was the sound of tripping, and the cursing grew briefly louder before fading into the distance. Now, Senior Instructor Lan Han began clapping his hand. Get to it. There are another 9 groups after yours, so make it quick. He passed the box he was holding to the uniform, which promptly handed it to one of the disciples. Chao Ren felt a wave of warmth suddenly wash over his body, and the sweat from the long run up the mountain suddenly evaporated out from under his armpits. He tingled at the familiar sensation of a cleansing charm, albeit far more thorough than the ones his father used to perform on him. Even the dirt under his nails was gone, and his skin felt sensitive to the touch. He made his way over to the changing stalls, the assistants and the uniform guiding the applicants along to speed up the process. Closing the curtain behind him, he quickly opened the box and bloodied the seal marker before putting it around his neck. The crucial step accomplished, he quickly stripped out of his clothes. Robe, belt, shoes, and undergarments all went into the box. He hesitated a moment before depositing his lucky red socks. They had gotten him through several difficult situations during the previous sections, but at this stage, he couldn't afford to let them disqualify him. He carefully rolled each of them up before placing them inside his box with a soft apology. His ring, amber necklace, knife, emergency talisman, and brush set followed, each carefully placed atop his clothes so that he would be able to tell if they were missing when he got back. He trusted the sect, but one could never be too careful. Satisfied, he dressed himself in the orange test uniform. The cotton undergarments were of good quality, as they didn't feel too stuffy, but he was disappointed to find that he had been given straw sandals instead of a pair of socks and shoes. There was also an extra bit of thin white cloth in the box, which he realized was a hair tie after a moment of contemplation. As he wore his hair short, Ren simply shoved it into his pocket before closing the box. Locking the box turned out to be the hard part, as he realized he had left the lock at the bottom of the box, under all of his carefully stacked clothes. After a few frantic moments of digging through them and a few careful moments refolding them, he had the box locked and gave it to the disciple with the tassel. After washing to ensure that it was added to the pile of boxes in the back of the room, he made his way back to the entrance, where the rest of the applicants were waiting. Some were making small talk, while the rest chose to stand silently, waiting for the last few to finish changing. Chao Ren chose to join the silent standing contingent, though he placed himself close to one of the talking groups to overhear what they were discussing. I can't believe Tang Zhen bowed out because of his ring. I know, Zhao Lan replied. Can't imagine what he was thinking. After going through the first 3 stages of the exam, too, no less, a third applicant added. Surely his filial piety was misweighed for him to choose to keep his ring out of diligence towards his mother, rather than remove it to honor the sacrifices that the rest of his family made to put him here. Now, who are we to speak on another's private circumstances? Another disciple asked. After all, it can hardly be said that every one of us paid for our spots just as dearly as our peers. What is that supposed to mean? Zhao Lan hissed. I'm sure Min Huan meant no disrespect. The first speaker broke in, and Chao Ren had to stop himself from doing a double take as he realized it was Bai Longshin. He was simply pointing out that there are some among us whose families have simply given more of what they have to be here. Your family might have the largest to let you simply try again another year, but for others, it has taken their family years of saving to afford their children the same attempt. I am glad that you were to see that you were able to keep up with us during the run, Min Huan. It would have been a shame if you had gotten lost and missed the exam. I appreciate your concern, Min Huan laughed back. I was unable to sleep last night from the nerves, and my attempt to calm myself with body cultivation left me far from well rested. He pulled back his sleeve as he said this, flexing the thick muscles underneath. I was able to make good progress in my study of the boulder shifting manual, though. The rocks get lighter every day. Bai Longshen gave the proffered morsel an appreciative squeeze before nodding back at him. You certainly are. If we both pass, we should find some time to trade pointers on the subject. I find that a training partner can do wonders for body cultivation. It can be hard to judge your form when you practice alone, and you can sometimes develop bad habits while doing so. I hope that we can, Min Huan replied, patting Zhao Lan and Bai Longshin on the backs. It'll be great if we can all pass together. Zhao Lan winced, brushing the arm away before he received a second pat. I think I'll pass on my own, thanks. Before he could say something pithy along the lines of body cultivators being muscleheads, the uniform finished placing the last block on the pile with a loud clatter.
So
End of chapter
I have
4.
to say,
Okay,
I
go
have to
ahead.
say, I'm curious about the ring because with what the kid was saying, I was wondering, people. This is from the perspective of other people that it looked like he was debating it, trying to take it off, and I'm kind of wondering if he's even able to take it off. If it's like a, like it's almost like a contracted thing. He has to do it. He is literally bound to keep it on.
It could be. I mean, again, it wasn't told from his point of view, and that was obviously a choice. And having the other students, and by choosing to have the other students talk about it, yeah, I was about to say, it is very clear that there is something going on because they even comment on how strange it is that he would choose the ring over all of the work he put into being here. So there's definitely something going on with that ring. And considering we have the author here saying no comment, you're basically confirming that something is going on. But the clues were kind of there that there was something going on. I need to take a quick sip between chapters. But on to chapter 5. We are still in the same day, and I guess we are picking up right where we left off. You're all done, Senior Instructor Lan Han announced. Now leave so that the next group can come in. Behind them, the disciples began. Oh, wow. That was supposed to be an exclamation, the quotation there. Behind him, the disciples began restocking the stalls as the uniform began to stuff itself back into the box by his feet. Also, I didn't comment on this. I like the visual of the uniform, not a person. A uniform is just doing things. Like, it's picking up boxes. It's showing, like, disciples where to go. A uniform, not a person, a uniform. I love the visual because my mind keeps putting someone in the uniform until I reread the uniform, which then reminds me, no, it is just clothes. It is just clothes doing things, which is a hilarious visual. It's probably not meant to be hilarious, but it is very funny in my mind eye. To just, this uniform is just walking around doing its own thing, and it's putting itself back in the box to come back out and do more work. Does this count as free labor? Can I get a uniform to do things for me?
I would like one, please.
One uniform slave, please. Just do my chores. But then again, leave it to me to like forget and then just like have a moment and see it doing something and utterly flick out. Closer to white collar work. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
But bum.
It would definitely be me where I would be like, oh, it would tell the uniform to like do my laundry or something while I take a nap. And then I'd wake up from that nap, forget that happened, and completely flip out. Like think I'm still tripping from a dream or something.
I appreciate the pun, dear author.
It is good. The white collar work. But okay. Young Lin gave him another courtesy bow, which the applicants hurriedly copied, and without further ado began leading them towards the assembly hall. As they left the pagoda, Chao Ren saw that there were at least another 3 groups of applicants waiting by the door, their respective guides doing their best to herd their young charges. He also realized that the disciples thronging around the assembly hall had only grown in number, though their activity was much clearer now. The initial group seemed to have been constructing a series of wooden booths and stalls, which, upon their completion, were now being surrounded by a raucous crowd. As his group approached, the crowd went silent, only to burst into even more furious motion seconds later. Teams of calligraphers began furiously sketching on wooden slats, and as he watched, a slat with Min Huan's face along with the number on the back of his test uniform, was passed to the adjacent stall, where it was placed at the top of a large board. The throng immediately began screaming at the booth, their intensity growing with each new name added. 10 tails that he doesn't make it. 11 tails that he does. He looks like a body cultivator, so he'll be fine. I heard the test favors them this year's. 2 spirit stones on him passing. Says who? Your brother? Last year you told me that he said the test would be about talismans, and I lost 15 spirit stones betting that Zhao kid. 3 spirit stones against the big guy, and 10 stones that says the test isn't going to favor body cultivators. You're on. I'll match you. The disciple at the booth calmly nodded as she took the odd wagers, exchanging each of their bets with a wooden shit as the disciple next to her jotted down the amounts. A third disciple in a white headband quickly collected the money and deposited it in large chests behind them. The entire process was incredibly efficient, and within moments, they were already taking new bets. As more names soon joined Min Huan's on the board, the shouted bets grew more specific. 100 tails on the Bailong kid. That's a poor bet. The odds of 10,000 to 1 that he fails. I know. That's why I'm putting 1 tail on him failing. 5 spirit stones on applicant 6, and 3 tails of spirit jade against applicant 17. 8 spirit stones that 15 make it, and 3 that 14 fails. 2 marrow refining pills against 14. 12 vouchers for a plate of shrimp dumplings at the Crab's Den on 7. My spirit ginseng on applicant 8. The assortment of items being wagered astounded Xiaoren, as it seemed the brokers were willing to take anything as payment. Well, almost anything. 1 lesson with a senior disciple that number 3 passes. Fuck off, Ying Chao. You know the rules. A knuckle rap on one of the gambling booth signs, which read, "No loitering. Leave once your bet is taken." When Ying Chao cocked his head in bemusement, the disciple looked behind him and rapped the appropriate sign instead. Bets only taken in money or goods. That wasn't there last time I was here. We have had it for a decade and a half, ever since you tried to pass rambling about the virtues of great mountains for 2 sticks as a lesson. Well, I thought it was enlightening. Cash or get out. Fine, fine. 3 tails on number 3. Next. Ying Chao, satisfied with his bet, began making his way over to the opposing food stalls as the betting continued. 20 spirit stones that number 14 fails. Do you take artifacts? Okay. 3 jade slips on number 5 and 2 against number 14. And also 3 stones against number 14 and 15 stones that 14 fails and another 5 that he's the first to. And let's put 3 tails against number 14 for an even 20 spread. 5 against number 14. Applicant 14. Number 14. 14. 14. 14. Chao Ren shut the sounds of the betting out of his ears. He just couldn't take hearing his own number anymore. The enhanced senses that he was just beginning to refine that had let him hear almost every utterance of it, and a veritable death chant praying for his failure. He was glad that the listening technique he was practicing was the sort that he could control. He'd heard horror stories of aspiring cultivators driven mad by their newfound sensitivities, unable to stop the deluge from their overflowing minds. Still, it continued to echo inside of him. 14! 14, 14, 4, 4, 4, 4. Death. Why did it have to be that number? There were so many others it could have been. 11, 8, 18, 3 even. But of course, it had to be an accursed number like 14. Just like the day, just like the month. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. If he had only chosen the stall to the right, then he could have been number 12. That was an excellent number. The zodiac number. Ancestors, why did he have to leave his socks behind? No, he was stuck here with these stupid sandals, with no socks, on this unlucky day of this unlucky month, with the unlucky number, everyone hoping that he failed, just waiting for him to stop. I said, can you stop that? We're here. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Chao Ren apologized, without realizing his feet had taken over, and they hadn't stopped until they had walked him all the way to the main hall, and into the applicant in front of him, who was also Bai Long Shin. When it rained, it poured. My sincerest apologies, Senior, he stammered out. This unworthy, it's fine. Huh? I said, it's fine. Is your hearing all right? Oh. Chao Ren flushed with embarrassment. He was still partially suppressing his senses, wasn't he? Slowly, he loosened his mental grip, opening the dam an inch at a time. The murmur of the hall slowly filled his head, a calm creak rather than the raging flood that had overwhelmed him. Nervous? Yes, Senior. I apologize for raising my voice like that. Senior? Shen chuckled. Senior? I doubt the two of us are separated by more than a year or two, and we're both applicants right now, so neither one of us is superior to the other. Of course, Senior Shen. Just Shen will do. With respect, I could hardly show you so little deference. Would Bailong Shen suffice? I suppose, he sighed. Look, it's fine to be nervous. Plenty of the others are. You're not. He laughed again. I doubt there's anyone here like me. What about Li Han? Let's just not talk about Li Han, Shin said firmly. Look, if you're nervous, let me teach you a technique that has helped me out in the past. Are you sure? I doubt that I would be able to learn a technique of your level. It's nothing so complicated. If you're feeling nervous, simply take a moment to focus on your ki circulation. An imbalance can cause your emotions to run out of control, especially during the ki gathering stage, so it helps to keep yourself centered. Chao Ren nodded at the wisdom of the advice. Closing his eyes, he felt inwards with his limited ki sense. He breathed deep, feeling the sensation of ki, the life force of the world flow into him. Here, so close to one of the peaks of the Teal Mountain sect, it was much richer than it had been in the lowlands, dense to the point that he could almost feel it tickle his tongue as he drew it in. It had an indescribable flavor to it, a subtle mix of loamy grass, clear rivers, and rough stone. Not quite a taste or a touch or a smell, but more of a sensation of increased closeness to the essence of the mountain, to the fundamental elements of the world. He couldn't believe that he hadn't noticed it before, but he pushed those thoughts of distraction aside as he focused on the feeling of the breath, on the feeling of the ki of the world flow into his lungs and into his daitan, the spiritual organ that was the focus of his cultivation. There, he felt the beginnings of disarray. Where there was supposed to be a gentle swirl of energy, there was an erratic vortex. Ki was still flowing to the rest of his body, but it was erratic, more sloshing out when it overflowed the limits of his daitan. How had it gotten so bad? He felt as he had only lost focus for a moment or two, but those small mistakes had already compounded upon themselves without his notice. Letting out the breath, Ren took another one, this time focusing on how he drew it into himself. Again, he drew the ki into his daitan, but now he guided it further, reforming the calm current that it should follow. He drew the flow out of his meridians, creating a path for the rest of the turbulent ki to follow, through his chest, out towards his arms and legs, all the way down to the tips of his fingers and toes. The pressure in his core began to lessen. The ki now spread throughout his body instead of being bottled up. As he focused on the breath, he drew it back towards his core, back into the calm, circular current. What he could hold, he let circulate. What he couldn't, he let go, breathing it out as easily as he had breathed it in. After all, there was no shortage here. If anything, his inability to recognize his newfound embarrassment of riches had led his body to its current state. Drawing in another breath, he focused on reasserting the control over his body. Ki flowed through him like blood, its path different in interval and passageway, but similar in nature and purpose. With each new breath he took, the flow grew more and more rhythmic, the cycle reasserting itself. Chao Ren's constitution made it easy as he possessed a 5-element spirit root. Rather than aligning itself with a single element or two, his body was predisposed towards balance, much like the primal elements that sprang forth from the primordial yin and yang when the world was new. Wood burned to fuel fire, which in turn burned down to nourish the earth. From earth, metal was drawn and shaped, guiding water to grow wood and begin the cycle anew. Round and round the elements spun, their minuet guiding the ki through his body. With each rotation, a fraction of the breath taken into his dantan was kept, not in great greedy gulps, but in small, subtle sips. Filtered through the cycle of the 5 elements, it was no longer the indomitable ki of nature, but rather a soft ki of his own nature. Every breath, expanding his dantan and meridians. It felt less like a hair's breadth each time, but any step forwards was a step towards the next stage of his cultivation. After he had grown accustomed to the sensation, Chao Ren opened his eyes, trusting that the subconscious control he had cultivated from the first steps of his twin minds technique would be able to carry on in his stead now that the crisis was over. The halls had filled while he had been preoccupied with pursuing inner peace, with the other groups filling the hall in neat rectangles. It had felt like he'd only closed his eyes for a minute or two, but it must have at least been dozens, assuming they had all taken the same amount of time as he had in his storage pagoda. Time sure passed faster when you were cultivating, which, he realized with the start, was what he had been doing. He had gotten so carried away with fixing his key circulation that he'd lost track of where he was entirely. Did I miss? No, just a lot of standing around while we waited for the rest of the groups to file in. Bai Longshin whispered back, cut him off again. Are you feeling better? Chao Ren felt his eyebrows attempt to twitch, but he caught it before its minor sedition betrayed his emotions too much. As calm as he seemed now, it wouldn't do to poke a resting dragon, especially one that was taking such a keen interest in him. Yes, Bai Longshin, he replied, keeping his voice calm. I think our guide just wanted to get here early so he could get us out of his way. Shen continued, nodding his head towards one of the mezzanines on the side of the atrium. Indeed, their guide Yen Lin was there, sitting among a group of identically robed peers. A large platter of steamed bao buns was placed between them, though Ren noticed that young Lin seemed to secure a small pile of them for himself on a personal plate. As he watched, one of the adjacent guides attempted to swipe one for the plate for herself, only for young Lin to smack her hand aside before returning to the conversation. Whatever it was about seemed to be of great interest to the participants, as it was accompanied by a lot of enthusiastic hand motions. Before he could figure out a way to subtly ask Bai Longshin if he could hear what they were talking about, a loud thump rang out through the hall. Abruptly, the murmur of the hall went silent as all eyes turned towards the now filled podium at its front. There, an elder of the sect stood, his pale robes gently flowing to the rest of his hammer arm. He spoke, with a voice that carried across the hall, clear and strong despite being spoken with no great volume. Welcome, applicants, to the Teal Mountain Sect. And that is the end of chapter 5.
So my thought right now is obviously even putting your stuff in the box is a test in and of itself. You know, basic, can you follow directions, rules, orders, etc. I'm going into the area and immediately hitting betting. That feels way too deliberate by the sect and feels like it is a test to see how different applicants will respond to their egos being raised and fallen. And the fact everyone was betting against 14. 14 to this sect would be an auspicious number. It would be a very important, even lucky number within this sect, given it started with 14 disciples.
You're right.
So
You are right. And also, I mean, like, he also pointed out, which I didn't even notice, and I read the date like 3 times. It is the 14th day of the 4th month.
Right. But the kid is thinking, like, in the standard numerology, that 14 and 4, bad days, bad things. But for this sect, 14 would be important. I suspect the numbers are given purposefully. It seems random, but it's probably purposefully. They gently are guiding people towards different tables or whatever. And this kid was given 14 because they actually have high expectations.
I was actually going to.
Their from first test is getting barraged with everyone's betting on them to lose and how they'll react.
I'm going to disagree slightly because I think it more has to do. You remember him commenting that he was wearing lucky socks?
Mm-hmm.
The red lucky socks that had gotten through the first trial. I think it's more because of his socks he was led to 14. Because, like he said, the socks had guided him towards where he needed to go, but he can't wear the socks for this next trial. So what's the best that luck could give him? The right number.
I could see that be a possibility as well. So I think it could be either way. Either the socks and luck were guiding him to the number 14, or it was a test purposely put up, because I could still see.
Yeah, red is considered a very lucky color in Chinese culture.
So I could honestly see it being either way. That either the numbers being given are tests set up for the individual students with supposedly unlucky numbers being given to the ones that they believe have the highest potential to see how they react when someone isn't pumping them up and how they face adversity, especially when the initial thing he runs into is everybody is betting on him specifically to fail.
I mean, there was like 2 people. Now I want to go check. I think there were a few people who betted on him to win. But now I need to go back and look.
I
We are
think the
during ads
majority
right
of it
now,
was losing.
but I do want to bet. I want to see. Because it's 3 that 14 fails, 2 against 14. That's against 7, which is a whole other thing. That's 3. Fails. Against. Okay, yeah. If anyone betted for him, he didn't notice. Because after a point, he's just hearing the number.
Right.
So even if someone did bet for him, he wouldn't have heard it because he was overwhelmed by hearing the number 14 so much.
Exactly. And again, I could see them seeing what it is that the kids put into it. Because obviously a certain amount of what you think, what you feel affects everything else about your energy, is shown when they needed to calm themselves down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to me, I'm kind of looking at this and going, they're trying to see if they can regain their composure when their energy levels are causing their emotions to run amok, either in a supposedly positive way of, oh, I have confidence in myself because I got the cool thing, or negative because, oh no, why did I get the worst number ever?
Yeah.
And even how are they reacting to each other?
Yeah. I will wait until ads are over in 30 seconds to say the rest of what I want to say. But I do agree. And you were spot on with noticing the numbers. You noticed some of the number stuff going on right from the beginning, especially with the number 4, which again, I feel really stupid for overlooking that it was the 14th day of the 4th month, even though I read the day like twice and I didn't realize it until he said it in the text, and I was like, oh yeah, it is the 14th day of the 4th month. I don't think much of it because 14 is like my favorite number. 14 and 7 are my 2 favorite numbers. All right, and ads are over. So we were just talking more about number stuff, and we think it means something, most definitely. But those are the first 5 chapters. If you want to read the rest and support the author, Distressed Koi or Koizetsu, who also streams here on Twitch, I've relinked the story into both chats. It does have 53 chapters, with the latest chapter coming out about a week ago. I can promise you I will be reading this in my spare time. It's got plenty of bingeable chapters for me. I am already enticed to see where this goes. Again, the fact that this is just one character story of many characters, a weekly Monday, a new chapter tomorrow. Love it. Perfect time to sit and binge tonight. But I'm already invested in Chao Ren's story, and the idea that there are different stories throughout different histories of the sect where we can learn different parts of what goes on here only interests me more, honestly. Like these first 5 chapters, again, I said it earlier, but I think this is a great story if you don't know much about cultivation and you want to learn more in a way that doesn't feel like reading a report. Because that can often put people off for these kinds of stories because it's a lot. There is a lot to learn, and if you don't understand it, it can feel like you're reading a book report or like you're reading a what's the word? A glossary instead of reading a story, because about every 5 or so paragraphs they're pausing the story to explain what's happening. Koi is doing a great job here of weaving in that world building and those necessary explanations into character moments. It is coming through so naturally what is what and why these things are important. And it's just coming through character thoughts. It's coming through character interactions without having to sit here and be like, this is this and this is this and this is what this means and this type of cultivation is this. It is coming through very well, and that is great to see in this kind of story where you do necessarily need some of that world building. I said at the beginning I do like cultivation stories, and this is great for me. I also have to say partially because I started reading one and they finished the first season and left it on a cliffhanger and then said they have no intention of coming back to the story. So I'm very sad by that. Heavy tears. because I was really getting into it and the story's not going to continue. So I was looking for a new cultivation story, and the universe has worked together so that we may finish it. I will need to look up the title on my phone. I was reading it on Tapas, so I have to look up what it's called on my phone. It was very sad. I will not recommend it because, like I said, it ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm not that mean to recommend a story that is not finished, will not be finished. Eternal God Emperor is what it was called. And I really liked the premise. I liked where it was going. I liked the characters. And then it just ends on a cliffhanger. And I'm like, thanks, universe. I was really getting into that story. And so now I will never know what happens. I will never know how he becomes the Eternal God Emperor. That makes me very sad. But no, I really enjoy this. I will be reading this in my free time. That is a definite. And I will definitely be supporting this on the side. So like I said, I've linked it in both chats. Again, I definitely would say go check the story out. I loved it, especially if you liked what we read here on stream. Oops. However, I have been streaming for 3.5 hours because I started early today. So I am going to...
You might need to go rest.
Yes. I'm going to be looking for someone to raid. I will announce tomorrow is Monday, which is my typical gaming stream. And in the vein of writing, solo leveling just came out. The full game came out this weekend. So we are going to be playing that on stream tomorrow. I usually start streaming at 8. I will likely start streaming at 6 and stream for 6 hours straight. Stream from 6 p.m. till midnight. Playing solo leveling. Because it just came out this weekend and I want to play it. And like I said, I was super excited when the demo came out because I love the original web novel. I'm not a huge fan of the anime because of the changes. I've talked about that before, and I will likely talk about it during the game tomorrow. But the game does not have microtransactions to unlock characters. It is hella reasonably priced, which I love to see and want to support. And it is following the original web novel plotline with some additional chapters added by the web novel author. So I am super excited to see that. It is super great to see a web novel, of all things, be turned into a game. As someone who writes web novels, it is so cool. And I want to play the game. And I really enjoyed playing the demo, even if I wasn't great. And I don't need to be great to have fun. So that will be tomorrow's stream. It will start at 6 p.m., so 2 hours earlier than my normal stream. But we will be playing solo leveling. That will be tomorrow's stream. In the interest of today, let's see who I can find to raid. I'd like to raid someone who is in reading and writing. Looks like someone is doing a readathon. That could be fun and interesting. My kitten is playing with my chair. Is anyone I'm following currently streaming and reading and writing? Oh, kitten, stop. She's being so cute. No, no one is. Let's see. Is anyone else reading? You know what? Considering it is late night for quite a few of us, let's go to a sleepy time reading stream. Let's go to just a chill reading stream where we can just have some fun reading.
And thank you for inviting me on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I absolutely love having you on. We should definitely do this again sometime. I know we can't 100%. Do it every Sunday because you have class on Mondays, but we should do it again sometime. So, all right, I'm going to throw you guys over to Nasina. They are currently working on some reading. And it's a very chill stream. They've been streaming for quite a bit. And they're doing some prep and stuff for a launch. So I'm going to toss you guys over there. You guys know what to say. You say, "Here come the dreamers." And until next